Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 International Youth Law Conference. Thank you for choosing to spend your Saturday with us. We are very grateful to have you all here today. Whether it's the morning, noon, or evening in the country you're currently in, we sincerely hope that you're all having a wonderful day and will be made even better by our conference today.
Thank you, Sohi. Before we begin, we would like to play a video showcasing all of our members from our IYLC leadership team, as well as all of our speakers you'll be hearing from in the next 2 days.
Co-founder and executive chair for the International Youth Law Conference. I'm currently a junior studying at the International School Bangkok in Thailand. I'm very excited for the next 2 days, and I hope you all have a wonderful experience listening to our keynote speakers and workshop hosts, as well as interacting with
Hi, my name is Jenna. I'm the co-founder and co-executive chair of the International Youth Law Conference. I am 16 years old and I'm currently in 11th grade. I go to the International School Bangkok in Thailand, and I'm very excited to be here with you all today.
Hi everyone, my name is Sohi Yim and I'm a co-founder and executive chair for the International Youth Law Conference. I'm currently a junior studying at the International School Bangkok in Thailand. I'm very excited for the next 2 days, and I hope you all have a wonderful experience listening to our keynote speakers and workshop hosts, as well as interacting with other students who have the same passions.
Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Ferrer. I'm an executive producer for the International Youth Law Conference, and I'm also a student at the Bishop's Diocesan High School in Cape Town, South Africa.
My name is Andy. I'm in year 12 at Harrow International School, Bangkok, and I'm one of the executive producers.
Hello, my name is Machale. I'm from South Africa, and I'm currently studying at the University of Witwatersrand here in Johannesburg. I'm extremely excited to present to you the International Youth Law Conference for 2021. This event promises to provide interesting insight into the legal field and a valuable learning opportunity for aspiring legal professionals. I hope you enjoy it, and cheers.
Hi, my name is Moray. I'm in year 11 at a grammar school in England, and I'm on the communications team.
Greetings, my name is Michelle Bach, and I'm a current sophomore at Seoul International School in South Korea. First and foremost, I will be serving as the member of the communications department for the leadership team, and would thus like to thank all of you, especially the speakers and the participants, for participating in our International Youth Law Conference.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan. I'm an Indonesian who is currently studying in Singapore, and I am proud to present to you the International Youth Law Conference 2021. As part of the communications leadership team, I'm sure that it will be a fun and fulfilling experience for all who have signed up, and I cannot wait to see you there. Well, see you there.
Hi, my name is Panpan, and I'm a grade 11 student at the International School of Bangkok, and I am the head of the media and design team.
Hello everyone, my name is Joseph Lim, and I'm currently a junior at Taejon Christian International School. I've been working part of the media committee, and I hope you have a wonderful experience at our conference.
Hello, my name is Sarah Kim, and I'm a current junior in Taejon Christian International School, and I'm associated in media design team.
My name is Sarah Landry. I'm in 9th grade at ISB, and I am on the media team.
Hello, my name is Velo. I studied psychology at UC Berkeley, and I'm currently a second-year law school student at Harvard Law School. And I'll be presenting on just some tips and tricks for how to approach high school and college, especially for admissions, and things to focus on throughout the application process.
When I was your age, so many years ago, I did not want to become a lawyer. I was the product of a family of lawyers. Mother, father, 2 uncles, a grandfather. They worked too long and too hard. But after 4 years of university, 4 years in the US Navy, I decided to give law school a try. After one semester, I was hooked, and now, 59 years later, I'm still practicing law.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Scarlett-Atkinson, and I'm a property lawyer. Today, I will share with you my reason for becoming a lawyer and also the pathway I took to qualify. I look forward to seeing you and to hearing your questions. See you soon. Bye.
Good day, my name is Fallon Letsoalo. I'm the founding director of FM Letsoalo Attorneys and the newly appointed director for Matabani Attorneys. My areas of speciality is estate law, trust law, and conveyancing. And those will be the areas that I will be discussing with you on Saturday and hope to inspire you in. My learned colleague, Mr. John Missy, will be joining me for the lecture. And without further ado, Mr. Missy.
Yeah, my name is John Missy. I'm a leader in litigation, Matabani Attorneys. I will also be discussing customary law vis-a-vis estate law alongside my learned director here.
Mr. Goh is a senior associate and partner for Fu & Quek LLC. He'll be sharing about how it is like to study law school. Furthermore, he will go deep on dispute resolution as he currently practices that particular aspect of law in his firm. He will surely provide deep insights into the world of law, specifically in the Asia-Pacific region. And this will most definitely be very insightful and thought-provoking for students who seek to pursue a career in law in the future.
All of us have devoted a lot of time and effort to make this conference a very insightful and impactful experience. We are extremely excited for all of the events that we have planned out for today.
As you can see on the screen now, this is a quick overview of today's schedule. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to message us through the Zoom chat or check out our website. We will now be inviting Mr. Jamie Beaton from Crimson Education to deliver his opening remarks.
Fantastic. Well, it's a real joy to be here with everybody. Now, for many of you on the call today, you're a very ambitious high school student. And I guess the objective of my talk today is to give you a sense of, what high school could look like, what your college goals should be, and then ultimately how that relates to potentially a legal career in the future. First of all, a bit about myself. I, like many of you, was an international student. I sat 10 A levels in high school, and then went ahead and applied to a wide range of US schools like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, Columbia, Wharton, Cambridge, and fortunately got into all of those schools. I ultimately settled on Harvard for my undergraduate education, where I did a bachelor and master's degree in applied math and really had an amazing time there. Met many fantastic international students, as well as made a lot of buddies with Americans, all over campus. As an undergrad student at Harvard, I took advantage of the US liberal arts program and took classes in a wide range of areas like math, economics, stats, and finance, but also things like entrepreneurship, business in China, negotiation, etc. Now, after getting into all these various skills, I launched Crimson Education back in 2013, initially to guide New Zealand students into the world's best universities. But it's been a wild ride over the last 8 years. We've been able to build our organization Crimson all over the world. And now we're the leading provider of admissions guidance to help ambitious students like you guys into the world's best universities from countries like Thailand, Korea, South Africa, Brazil, New Zealand, Australia, and even the US and China as well. Now, in my own academic journey, one of the most important things that I did was in high school, I really focused relentlessly on getting into a top college, because basically the way things work for postgraduate education in America is there's lots of emphasis placed on your GPA and your undergraduate institution for your undergraduate college. So I'm currently a student at Yale Law School in my second semester of my first year. And in my decision to pursue law school, I really wanted to aim for one of the top institutions, namely Yale, which is number 1 at the moment. Harvard is currently number 2, and then Stanford typically number 3, depending on how the rankings change each year. Now, it would have been very difficult to get into one of these top law schools had I not been able to go to a fantastic undergraduate college. So for you guys thinking many years into the future, I would actually challenge you not to necessarily worry so much about getting into your postgraduate law school right now, but actually to think about how you build a really good college profile, because ultimately that really good undergraduate degree is going to really help magnify your odds of getting into a top program. Law school is a bit different to business school in that law school puts more focus on GPA and a bit less focus on your undergraduate college than say an MBA. But for many of you who are, pretty interested in law, perhaps not certain yet, the best kind of insurance you can have is a strong undergraduate degree. So I guess I'll give you some quick examples from the submissions round. So this year we've sent about 87 kids to the Ivy League, including about 12 from Harvard. And in total now we've sent about 350 students to the Ivy League and about 130 to Oxford and Cambridge. So some key things to kind of take from the submissions round. This year we had the most competitive admissions round ever, with acceptance rates for Harvard dropping to about 3%, acceptance rates across the Ivy League dropping to about 5 or 6%. So it has gotten pretty competitive. Some of the key things you can do to stand out. Firstly, on the academic side, you want to think about extension academics, including extra APs, extra A levels. For some of you on the call today, potentially from China, one of my boys from China just got into Harvard in this most recent admissions round. And I would wonder if anyone can guess how many APs the student have. Maybe post in chat how many APs do you think the student had, and I'll come back to this shortly. Now, alongside your academic results, which should be either through A levels, IB, or potentially AP as well, you can also look at extension Coursera profiles as well. Like for example, online courses and things like machine learning. If you're interested in STEM, or in the case of law, you can look at different humanities coursework, whether it be things like a legal history, art history, etc. Now, after academics, you want to think about extracurriculars. And I was really impressed to see you guys, in the incredible forum that's been created through this International Youth Law event. It's a really fantastic example of one of the key categories of, your candidacy for top schools, called entrepreneurial leadership, where you go ahead and you play a leadership role in creating your own club or initiative and inspiring others. So for many of the founders of this organization today, it's actually an incredible example of a really fantastic entrepreneurial leadership project. The other category of leadership project is institutional leadership, where you're actually a prefect or a school leader within your own school, captain of the sports team, things like this. And then other extracurriculars are also really relevant. So let's say you guys compete in mock trial, debate. I did Thaiman, the Hague International Model UN, Math Olympiads. Many of our Thai students have done Math Olympiad, won a gold medal recently. Those kind of activities are really useful in developing your profile. Now, before I answer the AP question, and I can see some comments in chat that are getting quite funny, I'll also mention that a big part of the US application is actually your application essays. So when you apply for schools like Cambridge, you're really writing about, why you want to study the field you're applying for. You could be applying for law, for example, but for the US, it's a much more creative pursuit. So you're thinking about, different aspects of your personality that have evolved over the course of high school. So you, for example, might have come to this conference today and been quite interested in law, but hear from a speaker that totally changed your perspective. Maybe you want to do corporate law or make a lot of money, and you heard about a human rights lawyer over the next 2 days, which changes your worldview dramatically and makes you want to go down that area. Something like that could be an interesting catalyst for a great application essay. Now, I guess other tips that I would quickly give you would be, even though things have become test optional, you still need to sit the SAT or the ACT. For many of the people, the schools I've heard of today, schools like ISB, Harrow, many of the great international schools of Southeast Asia, these are, really schools where you want to be still studying the SAT, because US colleges still haven't really figured out a good alternative to admitting kids, based on the SAT. So we're seeing in our data that kids with the SAT or the ACT get in at a much higher rate. And then, of course, finally, I guess I'll answer the question. So this boy who got into Harvard from China, he took 17 APs. So good comment in the chat, 17 AP5s. He did 4 in his freshman year, 5 in sophomore year, then 8 in his junior year. So similar to how he did 10 A levels, if you're aiming for those top schools, do think about acceleration. 2 quick ways we can help you for your aspiring ambitions. And we're really proud to be the main sponsor of today's event. The first is through Crimson Education, which is the leading provider of college admission services. And the second is through our online high school, the Crimson Global Academy, where you can take extra A levels and extra APs from anywhere in the world and really, join live classes with top quality classmates aiming for these top universities. The last thing I'll touch on today is, the legal field. Now, I think law is one of the most fascinating areas possible. I chose to do Yale Law School because I wanted to be in an environment that gave me exposure not only to, the US legal system, which is definitely one of the most, adversarial, litigious, probably legal systems around, but also give me a lot of academic flexibility to pursue areas like negotiation, areas like commercial law. I'm currently sitting in an IPO law class, learning about how companies are taken public, by top New York lawyers in Yale Law School. And, I potentially want to use my law degree to help advance, my business and entrepreneurial pursuits. But, it's an incredible environment, a network of awesome, like-minded legal scholars that definitely will be, really fun long into the future. So if you are thinking about a legal pathway, the number one trick for success, nail your core academics in high school now, get into a top college, and then get a really strong GPA. And that's going to give you a great boost on your pathway through to these great universities. So I wish you all the best for the conference. It's going to be a fantastic 2-day event. And I finally think about the conferences that I went to just like this back in high school. It really motivated me all those years ago to think about global universities. And I encourage you to be really ambitious with your future. High school and university are crucial springboards in setting up for your future. They really, totally transformed my own life and career so far. And I look forward to seeing the amazing things you guys accomplished with your legal careers. So thank you very much. And I'll post in the chat a link to Crimson if you want to hear more about how we can help you. Otherwise, all the best and go hard. Thank you very much.
Mr. Beaton, would you be able to answer a couple of questions that we have?
You bet. Go for it. Fire away. I'd love to help.
Andy, could you ask one of the questions?
The question's in the chat right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want me to answer the question in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So the question is here, wouldn't you agree getting into Ivy Leagues is a coin toss? There are people who take no AP, subpar grades, and get in with scholarships. I'd actually really strongly disagree with this. So over the last 8 years, we've sent 350 kids to the Ivy League. And I've seen time and time again the kind of profiles that get in. Generally speaking, the students who get in with subpar grades tend to come from disadvantaged backgrounds. They might be, for example, from minority backgrounds in the US, like the African-American community, or even in, say, other countries, some of the disadvantaged groups there. Or they could be on an athletic program. So, for example, I had a classmate of mine at Harvard who got into Harvard with the US national SAT score. At the time, the SAT was out of 2,400, and the student scored 1,600. And she got into Harvard because she was the #1 US squash player. But for all of you guys from international schools, it's absolutely not a coin toss. In fact, it's a really regimented, structured, and pretty predictable game as far as your academic results. So generally speaking, it's reasonably easy to predict the kind of schools you can get into. You can't predict, for example, like can a kid get into Harvard or Stanford precisely, but we've got a very powerful statistical model to predict your odds of getting into an Ivy League school, a top half Ivy League school, things like this. So, of all the kids that I've seen now, more than 350 getting in, generally these kids are going to be, top of their class in various areas. They've got really compelling extracurriculars, great essays, great references, a wide variety of different, achievements. So yeah, I would say if you tell yourself it's a coin toss, you're just destined to lose from the beginning. You need to go at this process with a really focused belief you're going to build your candidacy. Go hard on academics, smash some A-level A stars, get your IB score above 40, get those A levels, get those AP 5s rocking, and then get a lot of extracurriculars done, leadership projects. You've got to be competitive to make this happen. So yeah, definitely not a coin toss, a really structured process. To the second question, and then I'll take one last one after this. This question from Deborah. Do the A levels you choose affect your chance of getting into a top law school? The answer to this is no, they don't. So law school, for the UK, they do. If you're applying to UK law school, then doing things like further maths are really useful to really boost your profile, show you're a really rigorous academic thinker. English literature is also really useful for law school as well. Economics also very powerful. And you could look at A-level law, which we actually also offer through our online high school, which you can do part-time alongside your physical school. So Google Crimson Global Academy if you want to take law as an A-level. Now, for the UK, useful. For the US, because law is postgrad, what matters is your undergrad GPA and undergraduate grades. For the question, a lot of questions coming in here, pretty hot. If you don't attend a top uni for your bachelor's, you'll still be able to get into a great law school, right? Honestly, it's pretty tough. I'm at Yale Law now. I also got into Harvard Law School. Most students that get into these top schools do come from a pretty top US college. So basically, you need to be really fighting now in high school to get into a top undergraduate college. Otherwise, you're competing in an uphill battle. So, it is possible theoretically, but it is difficult. So you want to make sure that you are going to the highest ranked undergraduate school possible if you really want to cement your odds of getting into a, Harvard Law, Yale Law, Stanford Law kind of program. For the other questions, how I did 10 A-levels, things like this, happy to answer them. I'm going to put my email in the chat. Feel free to send me any information about your personal situation, and I'm more than happy to answer some particular questions and give you some more advice. So bombard me with questions. I love to help, and have a fantastic conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Beaton. Next, could we please have Mr. Lyman come and give his presentation for the workshop?
Do we have a video?
Yes, we do.
There we go. There we go. Am I on? Do I have a video? Have I audio?
Yes.
Good. Well, good evening, one and all. The last speaker, hard to keep up with, obviously very, very knowledgeable, as it seems to be everybody else on this program is. Let's face it, by your age standards and my chronological passage of time, I am a dinosaur. So, thank you for your attention to observing this dinosaur's commentaries, even if it has to be virtual in these trying and precarious days. That said, this event is a real privilege for me, as I seldom have the opportunity to engage in conversations with young people such as yourselves. So, you've seen my quickie biography, so no need to repeat it here. My challenge tonight is for the next 30 minutes or so to impart to you a condensation of my 63 years of professional lives, that's plural. First, as a U.S. Naval submarine officer, then as an American lawyer who's been practicing law both in the U.S. and here in Thailand. As I mentioned, I was a submarine officer. Can you pick me out from that group? 2 hints. 1, I'm an officer. 2, I'm not blonde. Okay, I'm the second guy from the right. I still have the beard, by the way. All right, despite the passage of years, what I have to say tonight is not about ancient history, because you know that the title was What is Law, What is a Lawyer? But from my perspective, is about what you have to know today to succeed as a lawyer. Let's get started. First off, as you were thinking about studying law and perhaps pursuing a career in the law, you'd better like to study and to read everything for the rest of your professional lives. In other words, dedicated, nonstop, vicarious education. Let me share with you part of a letter I received after I gave a career day presentation at an international school here in Bangkok a few years ago. It's self-explanatory. It's from a girl by the name of Alicia Ray. Read as follows. From her to me. Hi, I'm a 6th grade at ICS, that's the name of the school. 6th grade puts her at about age 11 or 12. And I'm very interested to be a lawyer. When I go to high school, what types of classes should I take? Have you seen the movie I Am Sam? It's a good movie. If you can't find it on DVD, you can download it or upload it on YouTube. 11 or 12 years old. Okay, dear Alicia Ray, this is my response to her. You are a clever young lady and obviously bright and inquisitive. Good characteristics all for being a success in the law or any other profession you may choose. There are no right or wrong courses to take to prepare you for law school, other than those which give you an exceptional command of your language, spoken and written. Take those courses which interest you and in which you excel because they motivate you. But of course, there are required courses needed to graduate, which you must take and pass. But other than those, take those courses which challenge your intellect, test the limits of your capabilities, develop your creative intelligence, and open your eyes to the world around you, near and far. Read everything about everything. Keep an open and inquisitive mind. That said, let's go on to legal studies. The following is what you should know if you're going to go to law school. My initial university degree in America was a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, a BSEE degree. After 4 years in the US Navy, I was then accepted in a college of law in California to study to obtain a Juris Doctor, this JD degree, after 3 years of nonstop learning. As I was entering law school in San Francisco in 1962, that's a lot of years ago, I had a lawyer mentor, a colleague of my lawyer father, who admonished me, David, you will now study for the next 3 years to pass the one most important examination of your legal career at the end of that time, the California State Bar Examination. You must pass that examination to qualify to become a licensed lawyer. Do not let anything or anyone distract you from that goal and achievement. That advice is as true and applicable today in 2021 as it was back in 1962, because virtually all jurisdictions, that's countries, states, territories around the world, require aspiring lawyers to take and pass their local bar exams to become licensed lawyers. So potential law students, heed my words. Oh, the law, it's big. What are some of the legal systems around the world? As I said a few moments ago, I'm an American lawyer trained in American law and what is characterized as being in the common law legal system. But as I am practicing my profession in Thailand, I had to learn the basics of the current Thai legal system, which was founded on the civil law system. In addition to those two fundamental legal systems, British and European in origin, there are other systems of laws used throughout the world. Religious legal systems, socialistic, customary systems, and mixed or pluralistic legal systems. An example of the latter is the Thai legal system, which is an amalgam of German, Swiss, French, English, Japanese, Italian, Indian, American, Islamic, and Thai customary laws and practices. What a headache, but it works. Studying these international and foreign laws and how they interact is entitled the study of comparative law, which I did formally back in 74 at Columbia University, 1974. By the way, the first written code of laws was the Code of Hammurabi of Babylon in or about 1790 BC. Then came Roman law, followed by Byzantine law, and then constitutional law. Law. What is law? According to my dictionary, my legal dictionary, that is, and there are such things as legal dictionaries, law is defined as a statute, a bill, a legislative enactment, a constitutional provision, the whole body or system of rules of conduct, including both decisions of courts and legislative acts. It's a system of rules created and enforced through social and governmental institutions to regulate behavior, and its precise definition, a matter of long-standing debate. It has been variously described as both a science and the art of justice. The law shapes politics, economics, the environment, history, society in a variety of ways, and serves as a mediator of relations between people and with nature. Laws. So what kind of laws are there? Or what are the forms of laws? Let's put it that way. These are the forms of laws created by mankind. Constitutions, amendments, legislative bills and acts, statutes, codes, ordinances, executive orders, conventions, treaties, charters, agreements, regulations, rules, court decisions and court orders, and administrative rulings. All right, you see on your screen now a chart. The laws created by mankind are the ones that lawyers work with. And they're divided into, generally speaking, private laws, which are those which deal relations between individuals or institutions, rather than those between those people and governments, and public laws, constitutional laws, parliamentary, congressional laws, regulatory laws, judicial laws. And then you have the laws of nature, which I divide into two groups. For instance, the law of gravitation, electromagnetism, self-preservation, or the law of the jungle, universal laws, science laws. Gravitation and electromagnetic laws are science laws. Let me give you an example of how these laws work. The law of gravity. If you take a stone and a bird feather and you take them up to a height and you drop them down together, the stone will hit the ground first and the feather will float its way down. But if you put them both into a vacuum, so there's no air, just gravity, they'll both go down at the same speed. That's a law that mankind doesn't have anything to do with. Then, of course, there are the laws of evolution, cosmic laws, and the laws governing the universe, which we are now learning about. Okay. What are the fields of law created by mankind? Here is a long, long list. It goes on for 2 pages, as a matter of fact. What are we talking about? Commercial law, common law, communications, arbitration, admiralty law, constitutional law, constructions, consumer law. What else are we looking at? Equity, estate planning, finance and banking, foreign law, health law, immigration, human rights, intellectual property, big one. And so on it goes. Land law, laws of succession, legal education. You're dealing with laws relating to education as well as legal education and how to qualify. Okay, martial law, military law, much different. Naval laws, laws relating to war and armed conflicts, personal injury law, personal property law, probate law, and so on it goes. Real estate, shipping and maritime, sports law, tax law, tort law, transportation, treaties, tribal law, unwritten laws, wills and trust states, wills and trust and probate law. And the list goes on and on. You're going to have many different interests in the laws. Well, what is the job of a lawyer? Can anybody tell me? What is the job of a lawyer? By the way, the picture is of a British barrister, a female. A barrister in Britain is a lawyer who goes to court, and that specializes in court work. Notice it's a woman, and I'm sure there are many women listening to this event. It's not just men. So what's the job of a lawyer? Anybody got any ideas? Okay. The job of a lawyer, in its simplest terms, is to solve your client's problems. Not as easy as it sounds. Job of a lawyer is to solve your client's problems. Such problems and challenges are those caused by humans or humanity, by human foibles, by governments, by courts, by animals, by nature, and more often than not, by the clients themselves. A key admonition here is to know and to remember who your client is versus who is not your client. Don't get them mixed up. Too many people do. Okay, so we've talked about the job of a lawyer is. Now, what's a lawyer? How do you define a lawyer? A lawyer is a person educated in the law who practices law. Okay. An attorney or a person appointed to act for another in business or legal relations, or a counselor of law, or as indicated, the British barrister of law and the British solicitor. An avocat, as the French would say, a person licensed by applicable legal authority to practice the profession of law, and who thereafter practices this profession. Note that to be or remain a lawyer, such person need not appear in any court or tribunal, and many lawyers do not, and many have not even gone to court, except perhaps as a witness. Wherever and however employed, lawyers can work together individually and as parts of teams. No one can know all of the laws. So lawyers will focus on the practice of just one or a few fields of law at a time. The person who does not have, a person does not have to advertise himself or herself as a lawyer, nor earn his or her living by services he or she performs as a lawyer. Such a person, if otherwise qualified in his or her state or country or jurisdiction, is still considered to be a lawyer, unless the lawyer really screws up. He or she does not have to lose the title of lawyer, which they have earned the hard way. In the old days, a person could take a bar exam without obtaining a law degree. But in these days, most all lawyers have to have university degrees, and in some jurisdictions, even more than one degree. And most countries or jurisdictions require the passage of an exhaustive examination on the knowledge and application of the law and legal procedures. Some countries may also require the candidate to work as a legal apprentice or paralegal for a year or two in order to qualify to become a lawyer. Do you have to go to court? Well, what are some the law as a background for going into alternative practices? Just because you graduate from law school, whether or not you take and pass the bar examination, does not mean that you have to practice law. There are lots of other career paths open to law graduates. For instance, among the diverse range of jobs out there, law graduates might consider the civil service, that is, working in government bureaucracy, be it local, national, in parliament, or in international law. Become a tax consultant, work in publishing houses, or be a journalist and work in journalism. Join a management consulting business. Work in or with NGOs or other public interest agencies. Become the compliance officer of an organization. Work in law firm administration, investment banking, brokerage firms, universities, including law schools, medical facilities, insurance companies and need adjusters. Charter accountants also have needs for lawyers. I should say legally trained. Or enter politics as a politician, an appointed or elected official, or in their support teams. Be a human resources officer. Be a licensed conveyancer dealing with real estate. Or, like many do, become an entrepreneur in your own right. There are lots of avenues open to law graduates to contribute in one form or another to society, to your families, and to yourselves. In other words, the world is open to you as a law graduate. The characteristics of a perfect lawyer. A long, long list. I could say I meet most of the qualifications, but I won't say that. First off, you got to admit your mistakes. You have to have concern. You have to have courage. You have to be courteous. You have to be determined. You have to have dignity. You must, in all times, be ethical and be fair. Be honest. Have honor, humility, and don't forget a sense of humor. Integrity is very important. You got to have intelligence. Without that, you can't even graduate from law school. You expand your knowledge base, and you keep expanding it no matter how old you get. Remember, I'm 84 years old, and I continue to expand my knowledge base. And I listen a lot. Logical, be open-minded, be passionate about what you do, selfless. The key word, think. You'll hear me say it a number of times. Be traditional, be truthful, be well prepared. And be a leader. What's a leader? All professions require leadership if you're going to really succeed. And all lawyers, almost by their nature, are leaders. This is a book by a guy by the name of Lee Iacocca. Lee Iacocca was very, very big in the automobile industries. He brought a couple of those industries back from the brink of bankruptcy and become leading companies and corporations in the world. He also ran for president of the United States. One of his concerns was, and he wrote a book entitled, "Where Have All the Leaders Gone?" And he came up with what he calls the 9 C's of leadership. And they are. And these apply to lawyers as well as any other lawyer, any other leader. Curiosity. You must be creative. You must be able to and do a lot of communications. You have to have character. You have to have courage, conviction, charisma, you have competence, and you got to have common sense. And unfortunately, common sense ain't too common. Okay. You live in a world today with lots of buzzwords. These buzzwords that you see on the screen and others in a list I have here did not exist when I went to law school. or even when I entered the profession of the law. What they do apply to the life that you lead. You understand them. You use them. You work with them. For me, I'm still learning. But think of this, 10 years from now, there's going to be another set of buzzwords that you too are going to use and have to learn. They don't exist now, but they will. So think of buzzwords as a means of communication with all generations, okay? All right. Here's the essence of what I wanted to say tonight. Let me get a glass of water here for a second. The essence of what I wanted to communicate to you is thinking like a lawyer. Lawyers think in a methodical, structured manner to hone their analytical skills to arrive at an acceptable conclusion or plan of action to the matter before them. Let me repeat that. Lawyers think in a methodical, structured manner to hone their analytical skills to arrive at an acceptable conclusion or plan of action to the matter before them. This is the technique of analysis you will learn in your first year of law school. And then you will apply that method of thinking daily throughout your legal career. Think of this methodology by way of an analogy. All stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Then what's the message you want your audience to get from the story? In the law, to understand legal cases or matters you study or are before you, thinking like a lawyer means start with learning the facts, never assumptions. Get all the facts, whether pro or con, whether supporting you or opposing you. Then determine what or which are the issues to address. Follow with an initial analysis. Then enter into a discussion of the issues, either with yourself or with, say, a work study group or others. Then determine, argue, and apply the applicable legal principles to arrive at a conclusion, and hopefully a plan of action. Law schools train your mind to think this way. Bear in mind that justice can be served in many ways, not just going to court. This does not mean that lawyers are just going to appear in courts or other tribunals. Oftentimes, in contentious matters, workable non-judicial practical approaches or creative solutions are far more preferred. Such solutions are based on a lawyer being schooled in the law and then applying common sense or prior experience or creative genius, rather than reliance on the laws and going to court. This translates that to serve your client, it can be far more preferable to stay out of court if you can. In non-contentious matters, lawyers work with government agencies or their clients' business partners or personal representatives or with other people and organizations in a wide variety of non-litigation matters. Keep in mind, there is always a solution to every problem. Let me repeat that. Keep in mind, there's always a solution to every problem. It may be one based on law or on a practical one based on research and experience. Whatever, the lawyer's job is to find the right solution for the client. That means deciding on what can be done and how to do it. That solution may be simple or complex, absolute or contingent, logical or otherwise. It is the product of thinking like a lawyer, or in some instances, just getting lucky. Lawyers pay attention to details, to facts. Remember, no assumptions. To analysis, to processes, and to language, written and spoken, for words can have many meanings and can be twisted or manipulated in arguments. In a matter of speaking and thinking, language is like an art form put together to create beauty or ugliness, support or opposition, conflict or clarity, to be informative, directive, and expressive, or the opposite. So, know and master your language, both written and spoken, and then in good lawyer-like fashion, think. Capitalize, underline, bold, think with care and precision to express exactly what you intend. In other words, an old quote, favorite quote of mine, put your mind in gear before you put your mouth in motion. Let's now go on to a book that I wrote called Lyman's Laws for Lawyers. It was originally designed back in 2006 for my lawyers here in Thailand to understand, Thai lawyers, to understand our foreign clients and how they think and what their principles are and what is important to them, which may be different than to Thai people or in a Thai situation. So I put this together. It was originally 12 laws, LLL 1 through 12. As I began to think more about it, and the lawyers began to be more sophisticated, I ended up with 105 laws in my book. And I'm working on part 2. All right, let's take a look at what I consider some of the keynote laws that we should be concerned with. Look at number 2. The law is about people. The practice of law is based on personal relationships. So, lawyers, treat all persons involved with courtesy, dignity, respect, humanity, and a smile. Act with humor, there's that word again. Integrity, kindness, tolerance, and compassion. Be a good listener. Talk little, listen a lot. When you talk, make sense and enjoy your career. Your enthusiasm is contagious. We have the rule of law, or have the law and the rule of law to keep mankind civilized, stable, free from erosion and tyranny, free from abuse by government, by the stronger, from those who wield authority and put boundaries of reason on our own personal conduct. Lawyers are their guardians. And so on it goes. LLL number 23. The lawyers live by the rule of law, both its letter and spirit. Learn all that it means. Uphold this sacred principle. 24. The freedom of the individual and society to choose and to live without fear, insult, or injury is the essence of the rule of law. Until it's denied to you, you probably don't value how to cherish our freedoms, rights, duties, and hopes for contentment. The law may not always be right or be perfect, but even flawed, it's far better than the vicissitudes, manipulations, and machinations of the rule of men who abuse or misuse their power for their own purposes or gratifications through what they say is their rule of law. My final admonition to prospective lawyers is, and I've repeated it many times, think. I repeat, think. Use your mind, your intellect, your education, your training, your experiences, your instincts, your creativity, your sense of right or wrong. Then do. What I have spoken to you today seems that studying law and practicing the legal profession are both very serious endeavors involving a great deal of hard work and dedication to enduring never-ending long lawyers, which means burning a lot of midnight oil, so to speak. This is very true. But with the right mindset, outlook, and stimulation, our profession is also a lot of fun, intellectually stimulating and emotionally satisfying, and for many, financially rewarding. As I have touched on in this talk, there are so many areas of human activity which require the contributions of and from lawyers. So, if you find that the legal field in which you are working to be boring or devoid of stimulation, lacking in creativity, or counter to your beliefs, shift to another field of practice in this great expanse of the legal profession. Check the list, which I've gone over with you before. Job opportunities are awaiting there. Remember, lawyers exist to help people and animals and the environment and the institutions. I guess that's why so many of us lawyers are around since the beginning of time. In conclusion, and I have one more statement after this, be kind, be helpful, have fun, and be cool. As a final, what I said, an unscripted comment, which of course is scripted, last Thursday, 22 April 2021 was Earth Day, and it got me to thinking and pondering. I hope that you are not tired of hearing what follows. You are young. Obviously, Earth's future is in your hands. I and my generations of humanity preceding you are, by definition, old. We and all the generations of yesterday and before have put our world in peril. We have been abusing Earth's resources below, in, and on the ground, and in and on the seas and the waterways and in the air and above it. We have created the conditions for climate change, overpopulation, starvation, diseases, political crises, and violence, plastic and other destructive wastes, massive pollution, destruction of much wildlife, forests, plant life, and freshwater resources. We have created an environment in an advanced state of decay. This is not a happy legacy which we, the older generation, leave for today's youth and for the future of Mother Earth. Never forget that we are on this planet as the guests of Mother Nature. We're not here as her masters. Climate is everything, as headlined by Time magazine in today's date, 24 April 2021. Whether you go on to study and practice law, or whatever avocation you choose, your never-ending job is to save our planet. So, good luck and God bless. Any questions? Here's one. Do law school students choose their law specialty before or after passing the bar exam? Remember, your purpose of going to law school is to study to pass the bar examination. If you have specific interests, you can take those law courses after you pass the bar. Some people will take some before, maybe one or two during your whole 3 years of law school. That is the American system, 3 years of law school. Okay? But I would say, think about it. Remember, you're there to pass the bar exam. All right, if you want to become a solicitor, another question. Do you recommend a specified postgraduate law degree that is international law, crime or justice or human rights pathway, or a more general pathway where you could study public, criminal, and corporate law? This obviously comes from a British law student. The American system, don't forget, is 4 years of preliminary law school, then 3 years of additional university. So that's 7 years of college. The British system, you start out, it's 3 years of law school, and then you get into the practice of the law and going a variety of additional education. So if you're interested in a postgraduate degree, definitely proceed with it. Definitely. But don't do that from day one. Get into the law a little bit and find out what you really want to do. Okay? Where is it better to practice law, in the US or the UK? Which country is better to attend law school in? Well, the American system is based on the common law, as is the UK system. Where is it better to practice law? Each country will say they have the best legal system and the best lawyers. So I can't make that determination for you. You're going to have to check it out. Check that. Meet people, talk to lawyers from both countries, talk to lawyers from South Africa, talk to lawyers from Japan, talk to lawyers from the Middle East. Find out which system they like, what they study, what they need. Basic is you have to study law to meet clients' needs, and those clients' needs change. They've changed from my generation back in '65 when I graduated to today. Okay, another question here. What was the hardest part of law school? And where did you think most people go wrong? Actually, the hardest part of law school for me was the hardest course for me was taxation law, tax law, which was in my senior year. The hardest part of law school is constantly remembering that you have to study, getting prepared for class. You don't want to walk into a class and have your professor ask you about a case that he assigned to the whole class, and you're up, you're standing, and the professor starts asking you about the case, and you don't know what he's talking about. That's a good way to get thrown out of the class, as well as being very embarrassed among your fellow students. Okay, so where do you think people go wrong? Not studying enough in law school, not being prepared. May I know what encouraged, Mr. Lyman, may I know what encouraged you to practice law? All right, the honest answer is very simple. I loved the Navy. I was great in submarine school. I graduated in the upper 10% of my class. I went to my first submarine in Hawaii. It was tough. I had to qualify as a submarine officer, to wear those gold dolphins. A lot of studying. Okay. Did I want to stay in the law in the Navy? Well, in submarines, you're acting on your own. It was good fun. A lot of work. It was hours of tedium interrupted by moments of sheer terror. We never had to shoot at anybody, fortunately. But I also know that I got a big mouth, and more prepared for being a lawyer than being a naval officer, because as a naval officer, you got to learn to keep your mouth shut, particularly when you're dealing with seniors. And so I was a reserve officer. There were only 3 of us at the time who were reserve officers in the Pacific Submarine Force. All the others were regulars. And some of those other guys were getting out and going to law school. As I said, I came from a family of lawyers, 7 years of education, plus another 6 months of submarine school, and so on it went. I said, okay, let me give it a shot. As a reserve officer at that time, I could get out of the Navy, be discharged temporarily, and come back within 3 years with no loss of seniority, and I keep my rank, provided I went to tertiary education. So I said, what the hell, I'll give it a shot. Family of lawyers, maybe. And as I said earlier, after my first semester of law school, I knew I had found my calling. Question, how hard is it to switch the type of law you are doing? Well, it depends what kind of law you're doing. If you're doing a lot of law for NGOs, and then they want you to go into, say, corporate law, no, corporate law is NGOs as well. I don't know, it all depends what type of law you want to get into. Remember, I gave you that long list, and there are other types as well. Take a look, talk to people who are in both the law that you're in and in the laws that you may consider going into. The rest of it's up to you. Remember, non-stop education, non-stop thinking. How do you look so good for 84 years of age? Thank you. Thank you. Well, one of it is genes. My mother lived to 86, and she had heart problems. Her sister lived to be 106. One of my father's brothers lived to be 101. So there's some genes in there that help. Another, I have a young wife. That helps. She keeps me young. Oh, and by the way, the basic rule in marriage for men is, what's the rule? What's the rule?
Yes.
Do everything your wife tells you to do. Okay? And what's the best expression in law and for marriage is, yes, dear. Talk to your parents, they'll tell you. Yes, dear. So, in addition, genes, young wife, there's supplements that I take. The basic supplement is human growth hormone. Growth hormone is produced in the pituitary gland in the back of your head. It's what makes you grow up. And you stop producing it when you hit about 30. And then the production goes down. And that's when people age. You can see it in their faces, in their hair, in their bodies, and so on. But I've been taking human growth hormone as called somatropin by an injection. I've been doing it for 16 years now. And what it does is it slows the aging process. It doesn't reverse it, it just slows it. Also, you got to live a decent life, eat properly, take good supplements. Okay. Another question. How hard was it for you to move country and learn the law of that country as well as its practice? In my case, I grew up first at 10 years old in Seoul, Korea, where my father was a lawyer with the US military government. We then moved to Japan. He was still in the military government. So I had experience in Asia from the time I was 10. And by the time I was 12, I moved to Thailand together with my parents, both lawyers. So I'm what's called a third culture kid, because I studied law. I studied my 8th grade education here in Thailand. There was no other foreign law school here, no other foreign school allowed here other than the Seventh-day Adventist school, which was in a school, 2-room schoolhouse, K through 8. And then I went on to India for 2 years of schooling there, and then to Switzerland for 2 years of schooling. So I've been around the world in a sense. So it's easy for me to move from country to country. As I said, I'm a third culture kid. As to learning the Thai law, it took about 5 years. And it took working with the existing Thai lawyers in the firm, who were all very, very helpful to educate me and to help me with cases. And yes, I would make mistakes, but sometimes the clients would pay, sometimes they wouldn't. But anyway, we moved on, and I learned. This is not to say that I can go to court. I can't, because I'm not Thai, and I didn't go to a Thai law school, and I didn't take the Thai bar exam. But I am what's called a foreign legal consultant. I understand that there are lots of questions. Do I have the time to answer these questions? Somebody tell me. Keep going.
We have a couple, about 5 minutes or so, and then we can link your email, and if people want, they can email you the questions if you would like.
Okay, let me answer the questions that have come up here. What subjects would be most essential to assist in law school? I think I talked about that earlier. Language. Know your written and your spoken language. Know how to think. Increase your intelligence. What subjects be most essential to assist in law school? Take a look at the law school curriculum where you can go to school. There are many, many more law schools than just Harvard and Yale and Princeton, or Stanford. I went to Hastings College of Law in San Francisco, part of the University of California system. All the states in America have law schools and their state universities. Many great law schools overseas, both in local languages and in English. What subject would be most essential to assist? As I said earlier, language. Know your language. Know your language, written and spoken, and have an open mind. Be creative. Listen a lot. Talk a little. I hope that answers the question. If you could have changed anything, such as your actions and behaviors as a law student, what would it be? What advice to aspiring law students? Oh boy. I lived in a boarding house in San Francisco. There were 27 of us in the boarding house. It was a great way of establishing a group of friends for people coming into San Francisco who didn't know anybody, and I didn't. All right, I had a room of my own down in the basement, and that's where I would try and study. But I eventually found it a little bit difficult, and so I went to the county law library in the San Francisco San Francisco City Hall. And I stayed there so late, the librarian said, "Lyman, you know where the switches are, turn the lights off when you go." If I could have changed anything, I'm not sure at this stage of my life, what would it be? Be very careful about getting too many girlfriends and getting too involved in that. I learned that lesson in my university, where I forgot I was there to be a student and to study. Got involved with a girl, won't go into the details. Anyway, I failed 2 courses in my junior year. I had to go to summer school, and the only one was across the country in Los Angeles, California. I learned my lesson. I ended up graduating with a B average. Remember, you're there to study, to pass one exam 3 years from now. But you also have to have a life of some kind. Just don't devote too much time to it. Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Lyman,
one more question.
One more question, and then we're going to have to move on.
Thank you. What are your opinions considering the justice systems of the UK and the US? They're all very good. They all have their shortcomings and their failures, but they're the best we've got for the moment. And maybe you young lawyers coming in or young law graduates, you can improve on them. I hope that answers the question. Thank you very much for listening. I do appreciate all your questions. I'm always available for more questions or to get together if you like. Send emails if you would to David.L at tilleke.com. Tilleke is the name of the law firm. That's TILLEKE.com. I repeat that, TILLEKE.com. David.L at tilleke.com. I'll be glad to continue on this conversation in any way, shape, or form that meets your needs. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lyman, for your very broad yet deep overview of the law and the legal profession. We will now be having a 10-minute break. Please use this time to grab a snack, some water, or even take a little stretch. And as you do so, we will be playing a video from our sponsors.
Thank you.
Crimson Education. It was set up just 4 years ago by an 18-year-old student, and it's now worth more than $140 million. It's got a network of more than 2,000 tutors and mentors.
Well, Jamie Beaton is the founder and CEO of Crimson Education, now 22, I understand. So, Jamie, how have you managed to set this up alongside your own education? You've set up this company now worth millions of dollars.
Growing up in New Zealand, there weren't many students heading overseas. My own experience is navigating 10 A-levels, going to Harvard, and navigating that process gave me a lot of perspective on how to do this. From there, it's been a brilliant team and amazing support. Frankly, though, the biggest thing's been the success of our students. Ultimately, how well we do for our students drives growth over organization, and it's been the incredible results that's really driven the best. So every country has different processes, every university degree is quite distinct, and everyone has big implications on your future. So we really help our students navigating whatever is the best fit program for them anywhere in the world. So our network is incredibly diverse. We've got over 2,000. That includes seasoned, educated experts. So there's a huge diversity in the age and background of the mentors. The key thing is the high caliber.
And how does this mentoring take place as tutoring? Is it via Skype or FaceTime, or do the mentors meet the students in person?
So it's actually a blended mix, and we think that's the most effective combination. So we've built an online classroom experience for our students that lets them, roadmap out their future and plan the different years of university. They can work with all of their mentors online and share resources, but we also have in-person delivery. I guess the key thing is that many of our students are signing up when they're 13, 14, 15 with the view that they're going to spend multiple years in high school navigating this journey with us. The key thing for us is helping them unpack their interests and then build their profile, whether it be through leadership, through extracurriculars, through better subject choices.
This is another example, really, of how you just have to be wealthy to access the best education. Surely it's not really fair for those people who can't afford your fees.
So one thing we're really focused on at Crimson is access, and we have a really good financial aid system. So any student, as long as they're willing to work hard, can apply and get scholarships and funding for our programs. And from day one, we're really committed to making sure that whatever students can, have the potential to go overseas, go through us.
Okay.
And we've sort of also done that through our platform, Crimson Hub, which has got more than 4 million views and has free content that helps students navigate the process. So we're really trying to improve the baseline level of access for anyone in any country going through this journey.
Okay, Jamie.
Fascinating.
Thank
Jamie,
you very much,
Cheers.
CEO
Thanks
of
for joining
Crimson
us.
Education.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Sam Clark with Crimson Education, and we're here at NYU in the middle of New York.
We will start again at 7:20, so please take a break and we will join again soon.
Hello and welcome back. We hope you had a pleasant break. We are pleased to welcome our second workshop host, Miss Erica Scarlett-Atkinson.
Hello everyone. I'm unable to start my video for some reason. It says that the host will have to, okay, there it is. Can you see me? And can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, lovely. Right, I just want to start by saying thank you very much for inviting me to this conference today. I'm very honored to have been asked to participate, and I think it's a very good venture, and I'm quite happy that you guys have come together to do this. It's very important. It's a good training ground for, you know, being with like-minded people and going on a journey together. And I think you all should be very proud of yourselves, and well done. So my name is Erica Scarlett-Atkinson. I am a property lawyer. I live in the UK and I qualified here in the UK. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the reason why I chose a career in law. I'll talk about my path to becoming a lawyer and a little bit about my experience. But in terms of my experience, it's very difficult to articulate my experience in law because it's been so varied. But what I will do is to talk a bit about what I've learned being a lawyer. So if I start by talking about why I chose to become a lawyer, well, that in itself is also a very difficult question to answer because there is no sort of definitive moment when I decided that I wanted to be a lawyer. Growing up as a child, I had some strong influences around me, and that included some lawyers. And that sort of, there was a seed, I think, that was sown in me at that time, where I was exposed to what lawyers did and, you know, the type of life that they led and the type of people that they were. And that inspired me. And growing up, going through school as well, I recall having to do an essay or project around career choices and what I wanted to do. There was always a part of me that thought I wanted to be a doctor. And I think that was particularly because I liked sciences, I liked biology, loved chemistry. So I thought about becoming a doctor. But once I did that project, I did some research around law and becoming a lawyer, spoke to a lot of people, went to law libraries. And out of that project, that was when I think I decided that I wanted to be a lawyer. So my career path was set at that point. So having decided that that's what I wanted to do, I then started to look at the subjects that I needed to study to become a lawyer, or the subject I wanted to study. And I found that subjects like history, English, so English literature is quite good as well. And other sort of arts type subjects, those are really good subjects as well to do. But, you know, there is no hard and fast rule that you have to do you have to stick to sort of history and English and those subjects to become a lawyer. You can have any sort of background in terms of subject choices. So there are people that I know, there are colleagues that I know who are lawyers who were really good in science, for example. So they did science degrees, but then decided to change career and become lawyers. So there is no hard and fast rule. I think what is necessary is for you to research in your own areas where you live, what it is that's required, and then just try to meet those requirements. So I went to university, I did do a law degree. And after my law degree, at the time, the process to becoming a lawyer was different depending on whether you wanted to become a solicitor or a barrister. Because in the UK, and I think David spoke about this a little bit in his presentation, the two routes to becoming a lawyer, or two main routes, I should say, because lawyers are varied. You do have your legal execs, for example, they're lawyers, but primarily you either become a solicitor or a barrister. Barristers, they go to court primarily, and solicitors are the first point of contact for the client. So the client, if they've got an issue or a legal question, whatever it is, they'll come to a solicitor and then we'll seek to answer those questions. If it's a matter that needs to go to court, then we'll appoint a barrister to do that work for us. But there are solicitors that do go to court as well. They're called solicitor advocates, but that's not the route that I chose. So at the time when I had to qualify, I had to do a law degree. and then do a 1-year postgraduate course that was called the legal practice course, because that was a route for solicitors. For barristers, they had to do the bar vocational course, and then they would have to do pupillage within a chamber. So the chamber is where all the barristers work. So they would have to do a pupillage. And for solicitors, we do the legal practice course, and then we'll do 2 years training, and we call it a training contract. So you get a training contract with a law firm, and you would then work with that law firm for 2 years as a trainee solicitor. And then after completion of those 2 years, you'd be qualified. So I qualified in 2006 as a solicitor. So when I first started working as a solicitor, I went into property. So I did conveyancing, estates, that sort of work, commercial property. And I found that quite interesting. It was quite an interesting area for me. I wasn't minded to do criminal law, albeit once in order to qualify as a solicitor, you still need to do criminal law as part of your qualifications. So I chose to go into more the estates type area of law rather than corporate or criminal. And I worked for law firms to begin with at the beginning of my career. And then at some point I went into local government and worked as a local government lawyer. But whilst I was in local government, I did some property work, but most of the work I did was around town and country planning. So, there was a list of law areas that was shared earlier during David's presentation. And one of those areas is town and country planning. So I went into that in local government. I now work for the NHS, the National Health Service in England, and I am the property lawyer for the National Health Service at the moment. It is quite a challenging role, but it is quite also exciting, and it's very satisfactory, because with the National Health Service, I don't practice health law. There are healthcare lawyers in our team, mostly healthcare lawyers, but I deal with property law. And I deal with property law because in the NHS, the services are delivered from hospitals and health buildings, and the NHS itself owns just under, I think, 10,000 buildings. So there is a lot of property work that goes on with the NHS, and that is quite a varied role. It's quite interesting. It's quite satisfactory because I can link the work that I do to people who are patients. So most of the work that I do is to provide sort of legal advice to the National Health Service on giving money to organizations to buy properties for people who have learning disabilities and autism. So I can see the value of the work that I do. So if I talk a little bit more about my experience, and sorry if I'm rattling through, I'll try not to go too quickly, but I would like to pick up some of your questions as well at the end of this. So do bear with me. In terms of my experience, it's very difficult to articulate what my experience has been because it's been so varied. I mean, there were moments that were really challenging. There were moments that were really great and I was excited. There were moments where I felt deflated. There were moments I felt defeated, but there were moments that I felt that I was on a mountaintop, for example. So it's quite difficult to say, wrap up in a few words what my experience has been. But what I will share with you is some of what I have learned. And one of the first things I'd say to you is remain focused. Create a path or a plan in your head as to how you need to get to or what you need to do to get to where you want to get to. Have that plan and stay focused. There will be lots of things changing around you. There'll be lots of changes in yourself, but despite what's happening, stay focused on that plan and always have that end goal or end game in mind and work towards that. The other thing I would say is to be actively planning all the time and plotting out your pathway. Be proactive, reach out to people, reach out to organizations, do your research, be proactive rather than reactive, because that in itself is really good in terms of keeping you on the right track. I'd also say that you should seek out the right people to surround yourself with, because that's really important. The people around you will have influence on you, whether you realize it or not. So have people who are supportive, people who will motivate you, people who will also see where your weaknesses are and things that you need to work on, and would help you to work on those things. That's quite important, and it is something always to remember as you go along. This is a very good start. I mean, you're all like-minded people, you all have the same focus and goal, and it's really good to keep in contact with each other and encourage each other along the way, because people around you will be really important. I'd also like to say, you know, bring your authentic self in any situation that you're in. Always be you. Now, in order to do that, you need to know who you are as a person. You need to know yourself. So take time to understand yourself. Don't be hard on yourself, but actually look at who you are as a person. Identify your strengths and build on those. Identify your weaknesses and work on them. So, you know, this is something that is quite important, because when you're in an organization, whether that's government or private practice or a charity, you will need to be yourself, because there will be a lot of people along the way who will want to tell you who you are and would like to give you advice based on who they think you are. But it's important as a person to know who you are in yourself and to stick to that. Be authentic at all times. The other thing is to periodically sense check yourself. Have a think about where you've come from, where you're going, what your successes were, where you weren't so successful, where you've made mistakes, what you can learn from those mistakes, and learn, you know, adapt to changing situations, and always sense check what is happening around you and in you as a person. I think that is really important to do. Also, you need to be very resilient. I'm not going to go through all the characteristics of being a good lawyer, because David did cover off a lot of those things, but resilience is very important, because there will be times when you will get knocked. There will be times when you put your best effort forward and your best effort is not enough, but you always have to bounce back. And that is really, really important if you're going to pursue a career in law. Also, be kind. That is quite important. David spoke about integrity and kindness. It's important to be kind, not only to people around you, but also to yourself. You know, your success is not going to be dependent on somebody else's failure. So don't be overly competitive. That is something that is quite important for you to remember and to understand. Don't be stepping on people or shoving them out the way. You know, just be kind to each other and be kind to the people who you work with. Always have a good attitude. People will always be looking at you when you're in a legal role or in the legal profession. You've got not only the clients who are looking at your attitude and who you are as a person, you've also got your colleagues who are looking at you. And a good attitude, a good positive attitude is really important, and that will help you along your way. It's one of the most important ingredients to being a successful lawyer. It's not about being competitive. It's not always about being the most intelligent. You know, intelligence will get you only so far, but a good attitude is something that's quite important, because nobody wants to work with someone who is horrible. So be kind. And I think those are the things that I'd like to share with you guys. I know there were a few questions that were coming through on the chat box. David did cover off a lot of the stuff that I'd planned to say. But I think what I'll do now is to spend some time to answer some of your questions. So, I think there's a question that's come up that says, what's the best way of balancing life while still concentrating on becoming a lawyer? So as to not regret your experiences later on down the line. I think what you need to do is to just have if you think of a chart, like a pie chart, for example, divided into sections. So you've got one section which is your family life, one section which is your work life or your professional life, one section which is your me time, the time you spend with yourself, one section is your social life. So if you think about it in those terms, then it's up to you really, knowing who you are and your circumstances, to balance everything together. It's not a good thing to sacrifice one area in order to pursue a career in law. So have a think about how you strike that balance. Yes, you might be very busy studying, but also take time to build on your relationships. So that's your relationships with your friends, your relationships with your family, your relationships with colleagues. Take time to build those relationships, because they will become very necessary for you later later on. So I think just have that balance by looking at the various areas of your life and how much time you want to dedicate to each. So if I move on to another question, what is the one thing they didn't tell you when you were studying law? I think the one thing they didn't tell me when studying law is how difficult the journey can be. So when you first start, I mean, lots of people go into law thinking, yes, I'll go into law because I can make a lot of money. Some people want to help people. But either way, regardless of the reason why you go into law, there will be difficulties. And it's not going to be all the time, don't get me wrong, but you need to be prepared for that. I mean, there will be times when you get rejections. For example, you might, want to apply to a particular law firm and they'll come back and say, well, we've given another candidate this position because we think that they were a better candidate. And the wording of those rejections can be very painful. They can be very hurtful. Some of them, they're not always best worded. However, just prepare yourself for the challenges. Don't think it's going to be an easy ride. It will not be. But where you've got resilience, you'll be fine. You'll work it through. How did you decide whether you wanted to be a solicitor or barrister? Well, I think it's all a matter of personal preference. So for me, I'm not really minded to go to court. I do like to talk a lot, but I didn't really enjoy the court environment. In becoming a solicitor, you do have to do advocacy. And as part of that advocacy training, you do learn how to operate in court. But I didn't find that it was something I found very satisfactory at all. So I chose to move into other areas where it's non-contentious. So property work very much is non-contentious a lot of the time. Sometimes there are disputes in property matters, but I made that decision because I didn't want to be in a job where I was going to court every day. Another question, just want to scroll through the questions here. What is the most stressful thing about being a lawyer and what is your daily routine like? That's a very good question. So I think the most stressful thing about being a lawyer is not wanting to make a mistake. But, mistakes are made, and that's something that you have to prepare yourself for. David did say to acknowledge your mistakes, hold your hands up and said, I made a mistake, and look at ways to correct that. There's no point in trying to hide anything because it will always come out. But, it's that pressure to want to be the best all the time that can be very stressful. But I find when I focus on the work rather than focusing on what could go wrong, it makes for an easier life. And in terms of my daily routine, so it's a little bit different now that we're, in this pandemic because I'm working from home. So, I tend to get up in the mornings, I'll have a coffee with my husband. And then once I log into work, I'll start with checking my emails because most of our correspondence now is by emails. Within our legal team, we also chat with each other through Microsoft Teams. So I have to keep an eye on the Teams channel just to see whether there are any messages for me. I also have to keep an eye on the inbox, the legal inbox, because we've got a general inbox for the legal team where some people will email us through that route, or they might come to me direct through my email. So it's checking the emails, looking at my diary to see what I've got in my diary. I do have a lot of meetings, an awful lot of meetings. So, balancing that time where I've got time to actually do the work that I need to do and not just spend all of my time in meetings, because that could quite possibly happen if I'm not very careful. And just doing a lot of the work that we do in the NHS in terms of property work, we outsource to external solicitors firms. So look at all the cases that are coming in and where I need to appoint solicitors to do those bits of work, then I'll appoint the solicitors. There are some matters that I deal with myself. So, working out what I need to do, when I need to do it, and doing that. So generally, as throughout my day, it's usually very busy. It's not a 9-to-5 job. We do have the opportunity to have a work-life balance because we're working from home, so I'm not spending time traveling on the train. So that time I can take as me time or downtime or time spent with my husband, but it isn't a 9-to-5 job. So that is something that you need to be very mindful of. And particularly at the beginning of your career, it will not be, I go to work at 9 o'clock in the morning and leave at 5 o'clock at night. It doesn't work that way. So be prepared for that. Another person's asked, is it necessary to do a year of masters in a top university after 3 years of law school in the UK? No, it's not necessary. Some lawyers do tend to move on to do a master's degree, but I find that doing a master's is only really necessary if you want to move on to becoming a professor, for example, and be a lecturer in law. But as far as qualifications in the UK are concerned, you don't need to have a master's degree. You need to have a first degree. The system of qualifying for solicitors will change in September this year, from the 1st of September. So whereas before you do your degree, then you'll do a legal practice course, and then you'll do 2 years training as a trainee solicitor. From the 1st of September, you'll now do, you'll have to have a degree or an equivalent to a degree. So the equivalent would be work experience. And I think that determination, whether or not you have that equivalent qualification, will be determined by the Law Society. So if you, for example, did an apprenticeship, then that experience would count towards the qualification. So you don't necessarily have to have a degree from the 1st of September, but you do need to have significant experience in a law firm or in a law environment. And then after that, once you've accumulated that experience, or you've done your degree, you will then do what they call, or will be called, a solicitor's qualifying exam. So that is something that's very new. It will only start from the 1st of September this year. So you'll do the exam, but then you're also required to do some qualifying work experience if you haven't got the experience. So if you've gone down the degree route and you haven't got the experience, you need to do some qualifying experience. And then the usual checks that they do on all solicitors on your character. So that is also, you know, your character and suitability, that is also going to be part of the process. So it's quite different from the 1st of September this year. So the next question was about, you said earlier that you might be interested in the sciences. When you finally decided on law, how did you assure yourself that you were making the right choice and not think about what if you could have missed in science? So I think what that person is asking is about how confident I was that I really wanted to pursue law. I think once I'd done that piece of work where I looked at what it would mean to become a lawyer, what route I needed to take, it solidified in my mind that that's something that I wanted to do. Yes, I liked the sciences, but having done that research, I realized that law is something that affects every part of our lives. Whether it's going out in a car, you know, driving a car, that car would have been made to certain standards, which is governed by law. You're driving on the road, you've got road or rules around being on the road, and that again comes out of law. If it's around pursuing, you know, a certain career, for example, there might be rules around or laws around what you can and can't do. So everything that we do on a day-to-day basis is affected by law. And I thought that brings a myriad of possibilities. And David spoke a little bit about this earlier on, about the choices that you can have. And that's quite important to understand. My career has primarily been in legal firms and in local government and in law, but I also did 4 years in estates in the NHS. So I wasn't working as a lawyer, I was just working as an estates advisor. So that my previous experience in property law prepared me for doing that role. So for me, it was all those possibilities and weighing up a career in science. And I do think that would, you know, bring possibilities, but all the possibilities that I could see in law, that for me was really what concreted my decision that I wanted to work in law. So another question is it difficult to pursue law as a young Black woman? And does it affect how people view you and how hard you have to work? And the answer to that question, I think, is yes, it is difficult. It is becoming a lot easier, I understand now. However, when I started, there was a lecturer that said to me, you're going to have two big things that will work against you in becoming a lawyer in the UK. One is that you're a woman, and two is that you're a Black woman. And he was right. I mean, there were times where I felt that I had to work even more, you know, a lot harder than my white colleagues. you know, in some cases, you know, I did work for a firm at one point where there were a couple of like older white male colleagues who didn't necessarily feel that the legal world was a world for women. So yes, it was a difficult road for me, but you know, with perseverance, you will get there, and you will find other people who will support you. So you will find, you know, other non-Black or non-Asian colleagues who will be supportive, and they are the majority. The ones who are still you know, thinking that it's not the place of a woman to be in law, or it's not the place of a person of color to be in law, there are very few. But you know, you will sometimes face some form of challenges, and you just need to be able to be resilient and to have sheer determination and just keep pushing. And you know, whether or not you are, you know, regardless of your color or your race or your background, in a career, you know, as a lawyer, you will need to work hard. So, you know, even taking out of the picture all the things around race and around, you know, economic status, if you take all of that away, there is still some amount of competition. And if you want to do well, you need to be competitive, not overly competitive, not to the point where you're stepping on people to get where you want to, but there is still, you know, that if there is a job that comes up, for example, in your place of employ, there will be more than one people, more than likely, that will apply for that role. So you will be competing. So you will need to work hard and in some sense prove your worth. So, you know, take away everything else, be focused on what you need to do to get to where you know, to where you need to be. So another question is, if your current A-levels are a mixture of creative subjects like designing and logical thinking, like business studies, can you still get into law? And if not, then what can be done to improve on it? I mean, you know, like I said earlier, it really doesn't matter what route you take in terms of your subjects. It does help if you study subjects such as history or literature, because of the volume of reading and retaining information. But you know, you could do the sciences, it really doesn't matter. I think what matters is how you do in whatever areas that you choose to pursue. So you need to do well, you need to get good grades, you need to you know, be a cut above the rest, you know, so you need to focus on your studies and get the best outcomes in terms of your grades as much as possible. How did you stay disciplined through law school and high school? And I think that's a very good question. I think in terms of discipline, you have to be able to motivate yourself. That's the first thing, because sometimes it does get boring. So you need to be able to motivate yourself. You need to look at how, you know, what works for you. I was one of those people that you call, I mean, you know, some people would say you're either a fowl or an owl. Fowls are people who do better doing work during the day. They do better studying at daytime. Owls are people who study best at nights. I was an owl. So I'd, you know, get home from school, for example, I'd have dinner, you know, I'll do a bit of homework, I'll go to bed, and then I'll wake up like, you know, 11:30 or midnight, and I'll do some work in the wee hours of the morning. And that worked for me very well. So you need to find out for yourself what works best for you. And what is good as well is to set yourself targets. So it's good to have targets. So if you wanted to cover off a certain number of topics in a week, for example, set yourself time to dedicate to doing that piece of work and to studying and to revising or whatever it is you're doing. So set yourself targets and, you know, make enough time to do things that you want to do as well. But you need to have that sort of focus. And once you've got the focus, you push yourself. So even if you don't feel like studying or doing a piece of work, push yourself, do it anyway. And it just takes that motivation within yourself to do it. What is it like for foreign law students in the UK after they graduate? Well, once you can come in as a foreign lawyer, and there are rules around that. I'm not quite, I don't have the specifics around it, but you would need to meet the criteria that's set by the Law Society or the Solicitors Regulatory Authority or the Bar Association. So they've got different rules as to what you need to cover off. I think in the past, it used to be that if you come in as a foreign lawyer, you'll have to do a conversion course, and then you do the LPC, which is a legal practice course, or the bar vocational qualification if you wanted to become a barrister. I'm not entirely sure what it is at the moment, but it's something that you can easily check. But yeah, I don't think I can answer the question as to what it's like for foreign law students, to be honest, because I did all my qualifications here. But there would be some adjustments that would have to be made, particularly if you come from a legal system where it's slightly different to the UK legal system. So, but that is something that you could check. What else? There is quite a long question here. Someone's pursuing a bachelor's in liberal arts and sciences, and he or she would need to do a conversion course. I would have to do that and have 2 years of work experience. So should I pursue an LLM after the SQE exams if I want to specialize in a field of law? And I'm more interested in corporate and criminal than other fields at the moment. So in terms of that question, it goes back to one of the answers I gave earlier, that you can take any route really in terms of your degree. You don't necessarily need to do an LLM. Some people choose to do it, but I find that the people that I know who've done it are ones who then move on to become lecturers, like law lecturers. But in terms of working as a solicitor or as a barrister, you don't need to do an LLM. In terms of your choices and what you want to do, it all depends on what your likes are. And I think what I'd suggest or what I'd recommend that you do is to first do your research. If you want to become a criminal lawyer, for now with lockdown, it might be a little bit difficult with the pandemic. But, pre-lockdown, if the lawyer, you could go to the courts, you could sit into some some sessions. Some of them are public sessions, so the family ones tend to be private, but with other areas of law, you can sit in the court session, see what happens and how the lawyers perform and the process, and then that will help you to form in your mind whether or not that's something you'd like to do. There are also opportunities, and this will probably be the same for whatever country you're in, to apply to a law firm or legal firm to ask for some work experience. It may not be paid work experience, it might be something that you do on a voluntary basis, but just being in that environment to see what happens in a law firm or in any organization where they're lawyers, because some organizations have internal law teams. Just being in that environment to see what they do on a day-to-day basis and learning some of those skills, that is something that will help you in terms of your choice. Talking to other lawyers is a good thing to do. Conferences such as this is something else where you can actually hear from other lawyers, what their experience has been and what areas of law they have pursued, and hearing what that's like for them. That's all good ways of learning what it is that you want to do in terms of your choices. Like I said before, I chose to go into estates. The other colleagues of mine who chose to go into corporate law. I've got colleagues who are in immigration law, the colleagues who are in criminal law. So it all varies. And at the moment, I'm working in a team where there are litigators. So we've got litigation lawyers, we've got healthcare lawyers, you've got myself as the property lawyer. So, it's all up to you really in what area you want to go into and what subjects you want to choose. Another question, do you think that public knowledge of the law is adequate? If not, what do you think could be done to increase public awareness of the law? When we say adequate, it all depends really, because particularly in the UK, we're quite clued up as to a lot of the law that affects us. So in terms of paying our taxes, for example, if you're employed, you've got to pay taxes through what they call pay as you earn, and that's normally deducted from your salary by the employer and paid to the revenue and customs. if you are, you know, driving on the road, again, I use it as an example, you know, that there are rules around having your car insured. You must have your car insured. You must have a current driving license. You know, we're aware of laws relating to like the food we eat, for example, and the standards, safety standards. So there is that public knowledge around law, but in terms of whether it's adequate, it all depends on what's affecting you and what's you know important to you as an individual, I would say. But in terms of public awareness, I think, you know, there've been lots of efforts to increase people's knowledge of, you know, different areas of law as it relates to our everyday life. But in terms of whether people are aware, for example, of what it's like to be a lawyer or to pursue a career in law, yes, I think there may be, you know, a need to have a bit more public awareness, because there are still myths about lawyers. I mean, there's some people who firmly believe that all lawyers are liars because they have heard that being said, or their experience has been that, you know, some, you know, for example, in a court case where you look at the best way of defending your client, if you're a defender, you might find that there's certain things that you would say to the client. For example, I don't believe that you should take the stand, because then you'll be open to scrutiny from the prosecutor, for example. And some people find that to be a bit disingenuous. So, you know, but I've never had any experience where I can say that lawyers are you know, liars. I think, you know, lawyers have information, they have the facts, and their, you know, interpretation or analysis of that fact may be different to other people. So other people might think, well, you're just being disingenuous or you're not being truthful. So there are lots of myths about lawyers. There are myths about what we do. So, you know, public awareness is always a good thing about, you know, what different types of lawyers they are, what you know there are, what we do, what we not allowed to do. I mean, we're all you know, once you become a lawyer, there is a certain expectation in terms of how you behave, your integrity and all of that. And we wouldn't go into court and lie, because it's not something that we can do as lawyers. It's not something that we're allowed to do. So, you know, there are things that we, you know, rules that we have to abide by that the public aren't necessarily aware of, for example. So public awareness is always good. What's another question? What do you recommend to aid someone who struggles with the motivation to do revision? What I recommend is not to be too hard on yourself, but just set yourself targets and start with baby steps. So if it means doing half an hour just to do some revision, for example, for half an hour, take a break, do something you enjoy, you know, watch some television, play a game if you like gaming, and then go back to it and build up to it. So some people can quite happily sit for 2 hours, for example, doing revision. Others, they might do it in small chunks. So they might do 20 minutes or half an hour, take a break for 10 minutes, come back and do another half an hour. So it all depends on you know, your circumstances and whether you've got time to block out. But I just do think that it's important to remember the end goal, remember why you need to revise, and that will be your motivations for, you know, actually pushing yourself to do it, even if you don't feel like doing it. I hope I've answered that question. So
sorry, we have to leave it at that because of time.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, thank you so much, because your thoughts and experiences were so insightful, and thank you for answering our questions as well.
Thank you very much, and good luck with it all, guys. Don't be too hard on yourself, but work hard, and hopefully we'll see you guys in the future as lawyers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we would like to introduce our next speaker from Harvard Law School, Mr. Velo-Vincent Van Houden.
Hey everyone, it says that I think the host has to enable the video, but let me share my screen really quick. Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, there's the camera. Okay, I can't share the screen, so I'm gonna just go ahead. But I thought I would just start out with like a little introduction about me and some of the things I've done in case you have any questions or things similar about that. So basically I was born in London and I went to school there, the Netherlands and Switzerland before coming to California for high school. I'm a first generation college student and I worked as like a server throughout high school and at like various like convenience stores and things to support myself through college. And then I ended up studying psychology at UC Berkeley. And now I am studying law at Harvard Law School, and I'll be working at a law firm this summer, and then also doing a position with a judge on the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals as part of this summer. And I'm hoping to get into kind of corporate work and tax work for companies and kind of exploring that. And as far as law school, I think a law degree, when I was applying, I kind of really thought the law could be a great opportunity to make use of my writing skills. And I always kind of liked Legally Blonde and all these kind of like media portrayals of the law. And so I thought it could be something that would be really exciting. And it turns out that that was definitely true. There's just so many things that you can do in the legal field, whether you want to go into business or if you want to actually be like litigating in court and presenting cases, if you want to advise companies or even just like help out your friends with various things. I think the legal system kind of is intertwined with everything that you could possibly do. And so the legal field is also a really exciting place to be. Even when things are like going like the pandemic or other events, like there's always legal issues to be addressed and there's always legal problems. And so I think, especially with like technology advancing, of all the potential things that you can. It is very challenging. I was very shocked just of my experience. Actually, let me fast rewind a little bit. So in the US, in order to go to law school, you have to get a bachelor's degree or an undergraduate degree first, and you can major in anything that you want. And then after you finish that degree, you apply to law school, which is like the graduate degree. And so basically after finishing your 4-year degree, then you go into the law degree, which is another 3 years. And in the US, the courses are all set up based on cold calling. So the professor will assign you a reading and you really need to know everything on it because you can get called on at any moment in class and it's all random and you have to speak in front of all your colleagues. So you never want to be in a position where you don't know what was in the materials. And so at Harvard, there's a lot of different opportunities to get involved in things through clinics. So there's, okay, my screen can be shared. Let me try it again. Okay, it's still not working, but we'll go through. But, and so, yeah, there's a lot of different things. When I was applying, I had no idea kind of what was at law school. So basically there's these things called clinics and you can help low-income clients or just people in the community with different projects. So there's things for like tax, there's things for like immigration, criminal law, and all sorts of things about the legal field. And as far as the US application process, there are a few key components. So you have your LSAT and your GPA, which is kind of like one component. So like your academic performance. And so you want to do as best as you can, but I think an important thing to keep in mind is that your grades are just one component of the application. And so I think when people see posted scores for colleges and everything and they don't meet the minimum requirements, it can be easy to think like, oh, I could never get in. But those scores are by definition the median. So they can accept 25% of people that are not within like those high score brackets and still keep that average. And at the end of the day, they're really looking for people like not your just scores, because when you have the same scores, the way that you differentiate people is based on the other components of the application. And so on the application, you have recommendation letters. You can do 2 to 3 recommendation letters. And I think an important thing is to try to show different aspects of your personality and life. And so this is the same for the undergraduate as well as law school applications. I think it's good to show a variety of different areas. So maybe you could do something from like an internship or something that you were working, as well as academic recommendations that show you and like how you interact in the classroom with different people. And the recommendation letter is the only thing on the application that is someone else talking about you. So it's really important to build relationships. And so a good way to get good recommendation letters is talk with your professors, like ask questions after class and let them get to know you. Because the more they know you, the more they can write in the letters of recommendation. And when you're doing letters of recommendation, you always want to do this in advance, because a last minute recommendation letter is not going to, like, if you have limited time, there's going to be a limited ability to do that recommendation. Now I'm reading this question. If you go to high school in the UK and wish to transfer to the US for an undergraduate. Okay, so if you go to the high school in the UK and wish to transfer to the US for an undergraduate and postgraduate in law, do you still have to take the LSAT and GPA? So if you transfer from like law schools, so basically the LSAT is designed to kind of see how you'll do in your first year of coursework. And so if you're transferring from another law school, they're really just going to look at your first year grades. If you transfer still from an undergraduate university, they're still probably going to want the LSAT. But I think there's been a trend to kind of go away from standardized testing. I know at least until 2024, like the UC system in California, and I think Harvard as well for undergraduate, is like the SAT and ACT scores are not required. And so I think they're moving towards like a more holistic approach to the application process that looks also at the next two things I was going to discuss, the personal statement and your interview. So I think the personal statement for both college and law school applications is basically just you kind of saying your story, and you kind of want to try to address three main questions: who you are, so your background and experiences, and what you're interested in based on those experiences, and what you want to do. So, and what kind of perspective you can bring to the college campus. And then you can also have, sometimes they have an optional essay or diversity statement. And I think a lot of people might skip that, but it's a really valuable tool because it's just another opportunity for you to write more about yourself and let people, the admissions office, kind of see more about what you can bring to campus. So I definitely recommend doing both of those components of the application. And sorry, I've been just rambling, but I think some advice that I wish I had known while I was in high school was to not do things that you think look good or that you think will make for a good application, because at the end of the day, if you're not passionate about it and if you're not interested in it, that'll kind of reflect like when you are asked about it in an interview or things like that. And so I think you should, I would recommend, like, I wish I make like a list of all your interests and then kind of think of ways to pursue them. So whether it's in arts, writing, business, think of ways that you can pursue those interests, because then it'll also reflect on the leadership experience and potential that'll be on like your resume or CV when you apply. And you'll just build a lot of good life experiences that can make you a more competitive candidate. Also, connecting with your friends and faculty members, I think, is also a really good thing to do. I know in high school, I was really nervous. I actually, in high school, I like ate by myself every single day. And I didn't have that many friends. But I think as I grew older, I like kind of got more confidence in myself. But if I could go back, I think like networking and meeting people is a really great way to do things, because you never know like what kind of random opportunity you might encounter just by talking with people. Like for instance, like I never thought I would be interested in tax. And I just kind of got that interest based on like talking to a professor and then randomly signing up for this tax law clinic. And so kind of just like being open to different possibilities and seeing where life takes you. I know that sounds a little bit cliche, but like truly just kind of like going after your experiences is really important, because right now you have so much flexibility. I know it might seem like you have to be like on a set path and a set track, but right now you have a chance to really explore your interests and like fail at things and find out things that you don't like, and just kind of like grow as a person and figure out if you're interested in the law. And so here's another question. What kind of legal skills do you get to practice in university legal clinics? And to what extent can you solve those clients' problems? So that's a great question. If you go on universities, you can kind of see all the clinics that they have. And so I've been in the cyber law clinic and the tax law clinic so far at Harvard. And so for the tax law clinic, we kind of help people who owe money to the IRS or who've made mistakes in their returns, kind of fix those issues. We also do things to help, it's called innocent spouse relief. And so basically in the US, if you have a spouse that's like embezzling money or doing something else that creates a tax liability, both of you are held responsible even after you divorce. And so a lot of victims of domestic violence and everything escape these situations, but then are still stuck with this tax bill. So the tax clinic kind of helps them with that. The cyber law clinic does like advising for companies and nonprofit organizations. One project I got to work on was with this company that's making a comprehensive database of all the monuments in the United States. And so we kind of review contracts and terms of use for them and kind of see what they can do, and also like write privacy policies and things like that. So there's all sorts of different clinics at each school that you can try. And to the extent that you solve the client's problems, it really just depends on how much there is. Sometimes you get a project that was worked on by a student the previous semester. Sometimes you start a new project and you have about 12 weeks. So it's whatever you can do in that 12-week time frame. And you can also do like a continuing project. Best thing for grade 9 to 10s to do in high school with this pandemic going on? That is a great question. I think, again, reaching out to people, maybe like doing like remote internships or remote activities where you can pursue your interests somehow. Like in high school, I for some reason I got interested in knitting. So like I made like a knitting club where we'd like donate things to moms that needed like help with baby clothes and stuff like that. So just finding like an interest that you have and thinking of ways that you can turn it into something and gain some leadership potential. Yeah, I think just reaching out. Also LinkedIn, you can reach out to anyone on LinkedIn. So making like a LinkedIn profile and maybe looking up companies or things and say, hey, I'm a high school student interested in this. I was wondering if you had any summer internship opportunities, or just like blind emailing people and seeing what things are available even while everything's online. For gaining confidence, I think it really is just like putting yourself in situations that are uncomfortable. Like I was so afraid to go to see professors or talk with them, but the more I did it, the easier it became. And sometimes it was just like my heart was racing, like I was like so scared to go into the room. So just practice putting yourself in situations, and eventually it just becomes more natural. It's kind of like a fake it till you make it sort of situation. Even though it feels uncomfortable, you just kind of have to keep going. Is it a must to have a lot of debating experiences? Okay, so that's another thing. Law school, at least in the US, you don't have to have any legal experience. It's like, in fact, it's even better if you explore your other interests in business or arts or any number of other things, because then you can use that experience to solve the legal issues. Like more background knowledge in different areas is really helpful, because the law, that's like you go to law school to learn the law. So they don't expect you to know anything in advance. And it's actually more helpful to know things in like other areas. I do at the same time, I think like a mock trial and mooting is a great way to, again, like build confidence and practice skills that are going to be helpful. But I don't think I think you can just as easily build those skills with another interest or something that you want to explore. Yeah. If you could. Okay, so the average lecture at Harvard, you get assigned like maybe 50 to 70 pages of reading, and then per day, and then you have to basically know everything in that reading, because at any moment you could get called on by the professor, and if you don't know the answer, then it's like you're in front of all your classmates and all these people that are that you don't want to fail in front of. And you never know when you're going to get called. It could be at any time. So the process really helps you think on your feet, because then as a lawyer, you'll need to be able to like kind of answer these questions and do things that you don't 100% know. So that's kind of like the whole Socratic method of like calling on people to do the different answers. I find reading quite boring. Unfortunately, I used to read for pleasure in high school, and I much prefer video and podcasts and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, there's no getting around reading. Just like every class is going to have lots and lots of reading, but at the same time, there's so many opportunities in the law. Like you don't like there. I think law in general is going to involve like a lot of reading and everything, but you can be like a really strong advocate and work on those reading skills. Basically, there's a lot of different skills that are good to be a lawyer, and reading and stuff is just one of them. And I wouldn't be discouraged just on that, because that's something that you can work on. How did I know law was the right field for you? I really didn't. I didn't know. It was just kind of like a gamble. I studied psychology and I thought maybe I'll go to medical school, but medical school requires like a year of physics, a year of chemistry, and all those things just to apply. And I was nervous about that. And I really liked the writing component of law school and what I thought that could turn into. And so I kind of just took a leap of faith, and I'm really happy with the way things turned out. And just like advocacy, I think, especially in the US, there's so much like racial injustice and like lack of LGBTQ protections that as a lawyer, you can really make a difference to impact the communities around you and your own communities. So I think that's another reason I really wanted to do. I chose psychology. I don't know. I always have been interested in like psych wards and like just like mental disorders. And so I thought it would be an interesting experience. I originally went in as an English major, but the required courses were like 18th century literature and all this stuff that I wasn't really interested in. So I thought psychology, I could take the writing classes that I wanted and learn a little bit more about psychology. Have you watched Suits? I actually have not watched Suits. I need to get on that. Like Harvey Specter or something like that. I heard like a main character. But is it really fair that a law firm may only recruit graduates from one specific university? So actually, at least in the US, the firms take from lots of different schools. I know at least for Harvard, they have a set amount of people that they like to take. But at the same time, if you're not at the top of the Harvard class, someone from a different school could like get the position. So it's like they can't take everyone from Harvard. So the spots are kind of distributed throughout the different law schools for fairness. What is your opinion of Asians in the law in the US or UK? I think that there's a lack of diversity that's really needs to be improved in the US. So I think I would encourage any Asian applicants to apply, because voices need to be heard. And it's like kind of scary to be like the only person from your demographic in the legal field. But like at the law firm I'm at, there's only like 2 LGBTQ associates. And I'm like, damn, like out of this whole place. So it can kind of be isolating, but I think you can find community through the process. Can you recommend any books or movies that give an authentic or fun representation of the legal system? Honestly, No, because they don't show like all the extra work that is involved. They just kind of do like the high points, like Legally Blonde is like, doesn't show any of the reading that she has to do or any of the other stuff. But I do think, yeah, I mean, the paper chase shows all the stress, but it also, I think, fails to like give the good side of things. During cold calls, do you only have to provide information on the case, or do you have to provide your opinion on how things can be solved? So yeah, it's both. Sometimes it's just like fact-specific questions, but a majority of the questions are like, what do you think about this outcome? Like, what is the reasoning behind the different arguments and like counterpoints and that kind of stuff. So there's like a whole spread of different types of questions they ask, and it also varies based on the professor. What is the average age of the first year law student? So at Harvard, it's all over the board. Some people go straight from college, and I was like 22 when I started. Some people go later in life. They've worked a lot. They're in their 40s or 30s. So it's truly all over the board at Harvard. I think other schools, maybe it'll be, I think like Harvard puts an active effort to like make sure there's like a lot of different perspectives. But you can go to law school at any age. Which area of law requires lots of traveling and business trips? I think capital markets, which is basically like financing for companies. They do a lot of traveling, and I think, that's definitely a lot of traveling, and maybe like copyright or trademark if you're at a law firm that's like set up in different places. I know one of my professors was the lawyer for J.K. Rowling, like for the Harry Potter stuff, so she would like be flying all over the place for different things. What books do you recommend to get started in law? Honestly, so in the textbooks that we read are all just cases. And so I don't think there's, and what we learn is kind of like in class through the Socratic method. So I actually don't really have any good recommendations, but maybe I can think of some and email them and get them distributed to you. How did you find law internships in high school, and what did you internships entail? So I did a lot of just like blind outreach. I interned for a criminal defense attorney's office, which was really exciting. And that again, I just found through like asking people questions, like say, oh, do you know any lawyers or this, and like the career services office. And the internships, like I would do like reviewing of case files, and like any like drafting things. And so I got to like experience like a lot of different things. Psychology helped me in pursuing the law. I don't think I really remember a whole lot from the psychology degree. Like it was an overview of a lot of different subjects. So I don't think it necessarily was that helpful for anything. As an Indian, Singaporean female, what would the opportunities following law school in the US look like? I think endless. Like, I think that gives you a really unique perspective, which is what law schools want. They want the student body to be able to bring like different opinions and things to the table. And so I think you would really want to emphasize like that unique perspective that you can offer in like your personal statement and diversity statement. Have you met Michael Sandel? I have not met Michael Sandel. How old would you be when you finish law school? I will be 25 years old. I just turned 24 on April 10th, so I'll be 25. Have you chosen your specialty or interests? So I'm thinking corporate law just because I really like companies, but I would really love to be maybe like a consultant and like help people start companies or like just pursue their interests, and like having a little background of knowledge of like the different legal topics that you need to do whatever you want to do, whether it's tax or copyright or stuff like that. Would you want to go back and practice law in the UK? Yes, I would actually. And I think you can work at US law firms in the UK and work on the capital markets without cross-qualifying. But I think firms also have programs where you can get the certification to practice there too, or like go in-house at a company. Is there an area of law that links with the subject of international relations? Human rights, international human rights. I have a YouTube channel where I have like some interviews with different people on different practice areas, so I can send the link for you to watch. But I think that's definitely one. And I think like business and finance, there's like all these multinational companies, like you'll get a lot of experience with that too. Which field of law earns the most? So law firms do everything you can think of. Like they're just like have high paying clients and they help them on like a variety of different matters. So that is a common way people go in to pay off their student loans. But I think if you specialize in any area of law, like the money kind of will come. So I would definitely pursue law based on like your interests. And once you do that, like the money will kind of follow. If you major in law in the US, how did you implement it in other countries? So I feel like maybe this question doesn't really apply to me. So I'm still in law school, but like the US, like when you like do deals, like you'll work on like the US portions of whatever questions there are. But I think like the general skills that you build in law school, like when you graduate law school, like at least I like won't know everything about every specific area of law, but like using the tools that you learn, like you can study specific areas of international law or things on your own to build that knowledge base. Interview if you do an international exchange, and even if you don't know the language, it's a great opportunity to practice and learn, and something else you can add to your resume. Philosophy, studying with law school. I would say, I think anything can help. So just choosing a major that you're really interested in or that you want to learn more about is a really great way to do stuff. The skills that you want to build are like reading and writing and communication, but you can do that through any major. Okay, if I meet him, I will try. Is it difficult to make friends in law school? At Harvard, it wasn't. I think so. Basically, you're divided into sections, and you have your first year, you have all the same classes with students, and so it's kind of like high school again, where you like see all the same people, and you kind of build friendships, and everyone has been really receptive and open that I've met. So I've made a lot of good friends. Environmental law and politics is definitely an exciting field. Whether you go into government or a nonprofit organization, there's definitely a lot of environmental law topics that you can go into in the law. What is life at Harvard like? It's very stressful. There's a lot of lack of sleep, but it's fun. And I've learned a lot and I've grown a lot. And I feel like almost like an adult now. Like I feel like I've like just built a lot of skills while I'm here. So like I went to Berkeley for undergrad, and my dream was to go to Harvard for undergrad, but I didn't make it in. But the comparative experience, like I definitely got more from Harvard Law School. APs I took, so I was in the IB program, but like we kind of same thing. I did AP psychology, AP psychology, AP physics, AP English, AP French, and AP history, US history. So like I took as many as I could. Can I work in the UN?
I'm afraid
yes.
I'm afraid I'm gonna have to cut you off there, Velo. We're gonna have to move on.
Okay, no worries. Feel free to send in the questions, and I'll send a link to the YouTube channel if you want to subscribe and watch any other videos. And thanks so much for having me.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Van Houden, for taking the time to share your personal experience and for answering our questions. If you would like to learn more about him, you can subscribe to his YouTube channel and follow him on Instagram. I believe both of those links will be in the chat right about now. Now, we would like to introduce our second keynote speaker, Ms. Fallon Letsoalo.
Say hi.
Hello? I unmuted.
Camera is.
Good day, colleagues. How are you? This is Fallon Letsoalo. I'm with my colleague, Mr. Mnisi. I am a practicing legal attorney and the founder of FM Letsoalo Attorneys, and I've now newly been appointed as the director of Matlapane Tabane Inc. I've been in the field of law for over 10 years and admitted attorney for over 7 years. I got my admission in 2014, and I started my practice straight after I got admitted. I got into the field of deceased estates and wills and trust immediately after I started my own practice. Due to the love of estates, while I was busy serving my articles, I found a love for it. I found that that's where I could offer the most assistance to the public. I could find more guidance in there as well. And I feel it's the place that we can most as attorneys be humane to the public as well and assist them through what is probably the most difficult time that they're going through. So deceased estates in South Africa is governed in terms of testate and intestate succession. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about it before I hand over to Mr. Mnisi, who is my head of legal at Matlapane Tabane Inc. He's very experienced in litigation and customary law. So I just want to give you a bit of a diverse aspect on it so that you get the estate law, which I'm very passionate about, and I found my love for law in estate law. And then from his side, his passion, which is litigation and customary law, which he'll be speaking more to us about on that as well. So when it comes to deceased estates, like I said, there's two ways of administering a deceased estate, and that's testate and intestate succession. So testate succession is when you have a will. That's basically what testate succession means is your estate is governed according to the Wills Act of 7 of 1953. Just bear in mind, when it comes to deceased estate, there are numerous amounts of acts that govern estates. So when we speak about wills, we're speaking about who can make a will, and who can attest to a will. When it comes to wills, you must realize it's the guidance from the deceased, and that's what we get when we look at the will. As the executor and the administrator of the estate, we look for guidance from the deceased's will. He basically guides us as to how his assets are to be devolved on his beneficiaries. But there's one thing that must always be borne in mind, that you cannot rule from the grave, and that is one of the governing principles in South African law. If there are conditions in your will that are contra bono mores, the courts will disallow it, and the beneficiary will inherit in any way. So basically, contra bono mores means is if they are not of good practice. So if you benefit someone on the condition that they marry a certain race or something to that effect, the courts will disallow that condition. So anyone can attest to a will. They just have to be over 16 years of age, and they shouldn't be mentally incapacitated. And the witnesses of a will need to be over the age of 14 years old. And one thing to bear in mind, obviously, is if you are a beneficiary of the estate, you cannot attest to the will. You cannot sign as a witness to the will. In South Africa, there's many myths of a will, why you shouldn't do a will. But basically, if you want to guide your assets and you want to make sure that your assets go to the person that you want them to go to, the best way to do so is to draft a will. If you don't, your estate will then devolve according to interstate succession. Okay, but more importantly about a will, maybe I can just describe that. The will, like I've said, it determines the way that your estate will devolve. And it also it goes above as to what happens in your nest egg and so forth, as to how you want every single one of your beneficiaries to inherit from your estate. Another way, also there's different keys as to what makes a will valid and what makes a will not valid. So these are all governed by the Wills Act, that the testator must sign the will at the end of the will, and that all the pages needs to be initialed. If the testator, which is the deceased, cannot sign, he can make a mark, or he can have a thumbprint, or he can have someone assist him in making the will. If someone assists in the signature of the will, then it has to be attested by a commissioner of oaths, which, as you know, can be another practicing attorney as well. I would strongly suggest that when you advise your clients on their will, that you always update them and tell them that they need to update their will. They need to update their will, and they need to make sure that their will is current to their circumstances. Your will needs to speak to your current life at the moment. So if you get divorced, you need to amend your will. What happens when you get a divorce is your will, for the next preceding 3 months after the divorce, your will, if you die in that 3-month period, the ex-spouse will not inherit. But if you keep your will for after that 3-month period, then your ex-spouse will inherit. I'm actually dealing with a case like that now, where they've taken the will to the High Court to have it declared valid and the ex-spouse to inherit. So it's something you must always be cognizant of, and make sure that you know who is to inherit from your will. And guide your client, help your client. This is the one place that we can actually help our clients and hold their hands, make sure that they know what they're signing off, make sure what they're putting in the will is actual, what is their intention. Make sure you hold their hand through the whole process, because I think as lawyers we have a bad reputation, but this is where we can actually show our clients how compassionate we are, especially when it comes to the deceased estate. We can hold their hand and guide them through, especially like the law of interstate succession, where there's confusion as to what the deceased wanted. I'm going to skip through to interstate succession, because I think when I've spoken through about the wills and so forth, so I'm going to go straight through to interstate succession, and that will basically guide you through the administration process. So interstate succession is when you do not have a will, and it's the law that governs the winding up of your estate. When that happens, we need to sort of go on the family tree branch and see who is to inherit first. So if you have a surviving spouse, she would inherit half if you are not married in community of property. If you do not have a surviving spouse and you have children, the children are to inherit equally. If you have a surviving spouse and children, then she gets 250,000 plus, or child share, whichever is greater. So there's many principles on that to see exactly who is to inherit. And it is for you as the attorney who's knowledgeable about estates to actually do that family tree branch and say, okay, she's got a spouse. The spouse is to inherit half in terms of interstate succession. If they're married in community of property, the other half as well. And then look at the children. If there's no children, then we go in ascension and we look at the mother and the father, which is to inherit half-half. From there on, we then go to the siblings and see if the siblings can inherit. Up until the point where we actually can find blood relatives and distribute the assets of the deceased to the blood relatives. As you can see there's so many acts that govern this estate law. And once you get into the practice of this, the acts become secondary to you. You don't have to go in depth with them. Like you will know a section 29 is actually a notice to creditors. It's an advertisement that you place in. A section 35 is your liquidation and distribution account. But these are all things you learn in practice. You'll be surprised how many attorneys in practice still don't know all of these acts. It's basically what is your passion and what you actually want to delve into. So when it comes to estates, that is my passion. So most of the sections and the acts, it becomes secondary knowledge as in when you do the estate, because the administration of estate is actual work that you put in, whereby you report the estate, you advertise for creditors, you draft your liquidation and distribution account. So you'll sit with your client and you'll basically explain to them how is their estate going to devolve, and you'll hold their hand through the whole process, because it's a scary process, losing a loved one and then not knowing what happens to their assets once they have passed away. So you'll basically go through with them. And what I do with most of my clients is I copy them in on all communication so that they know whereabout we are in the estate administration. If it means we have to, financial institutions that need to render money to the estate, I copy them in on that. So they, knowledge makes people feel much more secure. So once they know how far they are with the estate and they know what assets will belong in the estate, it gives them some sort of ease as well into the process. And then basically after that, it's just, it's your admin process, lodging things with the Master of the High Court, making sure that you comply with all their regulations, making sure you submit the documentation that you need to submit through. And basically the Master of the High Court is your closest ally on this one, because they will guide you as to what they want. They will let you know whether they are not happy with your accounts, with your documentation. They will let you know, and they will help you through the process. And whilst I was doing articles, I was fortunate enough to be at the Master's office on a daily basis. So I got my guidance a lot from the Master's office, where they showed me the way actually to report the estate and how to guide my client, so that obviously that my client could feel secure in my work. And then just to lead into the conversation with my colleague, Mr. Mnisi, whereby he will be discussing customary law. The two work hand in hand, in the sense of, we in South Africa, where polygamy is very prevalent in our country. So when we devolve a estate according to interstate succession, and we have to apply the principles of customary law we need to look at all the customary marriages in the estate. So you have to see the surviving spouse and see how many wives he has, and then devolve the estate according to the wives that he has, how many have actually been registered with Home Affairs, which have been recognized as customary wives, and then devolve the estate. How it works according to customary law, all the wives are then seen as children. So if there are 3 wives, you would then devolve them as much as children, and then they'd get their share as opposed as they were one of the children, so that it could be equally inherited. And basically Mr. Mnisi is going to go further into explaining how customary law works. But in terms of estates, we deal predominantly with customary law when we actually trying to have one of the surviving spouse inherit, which is customarily married to one of the deceased actually. So with that being said, I'm going to hand over to Mr. Mnisi so he can further discuss customary law, and then should you have any questions pertaining to estate law, I'll be back afterwards for that. Thank you.
And good afternoon, guys. My name is John Mnisi. I'm the lead attorney in litigation here at Matipane Tsibane Attorneys. I'll just take it from the top and discuss, starting with the customary law of succession from the Interstate Succession Act, wherein we indicate the South African perspective of customary law of succession, which is embedded on the principle of primogeniture customarily. Now that there is a constitution in South Africa, then the constitution, I think, and I submit that it is the law of the country. And then most of the laws that are customarily, because most of the customary principles that applies in South Africa is for different many tribes. It's not applicable to one tribe. We have 11 tribes in South Africa, meaning that we will have then 11 different customary laws applying to interstate succession. When we look into that, if you look across all the tribes in South Africa, except the two which are from Europe, the Afrikaans and the English, they came with their laws from Europe. Then the South African laws is now 9 different tribes applying different types of laws, therefore which applies into customary law of succession. Now, from what my colleagues have said now, intestate succession there is an Intestate Succession Act which now came to level a balance across all the spheres of tribes in South Africa, to say that if then your custom or tradition is unconstitutionally, you have to refer to the Interstate Succession Act. That's what she said, that then you look into the deceased, the wife, the children, the family tree will apply first. Thereafter, if there's no wife, children, you go up now, the descendants, your parents, your mother, father. Then if you don't have mother, father, you now go to your siblings. Your siblings will inherit. So in the South African principle, all of that was across all the 9 tribes. The principle of primogeniture applied, which prefers the male, mostly firstborns, will inherit everything and support all the family members, including the wives. If you were in a customary marriage wherein one man has 5 wives, meaning that all the 5 wives will be supported by the male firstborn child of the deceased. The firstborn from the first wife will be the one in charge of the estate, and everyone who was dependent to the deceased will now get maintenance or claim maintenance from the male child, which is called the principle of primogeniture, which was discriminatory to all females. In cases wherein you find that there's no male child, they will go to an extent of getting a male child from the brother's child, and or the brother himself will come in and take over. That was the principle in South Africa, which is applicable to all the 9 tribes, which are the natives of South Africa. Now with the constitution, which in section 9 says everyone is equal before the law, then the constitution, the principles in the constitution takes precedence. All the customs which are practiced by all the other 9 tribes then have to draw its strength from the constitution, has to follow the constitution. The constitution says everyone is equal before the law. Of particular in South Africa, we still have chieftaincy. In principles of chieftaincy, then it has to be the first, either male or female. The one who is the firstborn is the one to take over the chieftains. That is because the constitution has taken application across all the 9 tribes in South Africa. Therefore, succession was based on each and every tribe's culture and practices. Now, the constitution era provides a uniform applicable laws which covers all the tribes. Therefore, succession now apply equally to both females and males. And then the intestate succession, as explained by my learned colleague here, applies. The customary law principles is equal to marriage in community of property. So if you are married in South Africa, I'm referring here to a one-wife marriage, because multiple wife marriage is allowed here in South Africa. Polygamy is allowed here in South Africa. So in our case now, if you are married to one wife, because most of the South Africans, some and or most are Christians, so in Christianity they allow only one wife. We also have Islam, they allow, I suppose, 5 wives. Then we have other tribes wherein you can have as many wives as possible. So if you are married, one wife, one husband, then the principle of wherein you share 50-50 applies. Meaning now that the intestate succession come into application. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, the intestate succession, then all the customs and tribe and principles of all the 9 tribes applies. Should you have questions, I will come back. However, I'm still here to take questions immediately.
We do have a few questions that were given to us from the sign-ups. We shall private message that to you in a moment.
Yeah, I'll just
There's one question in the Q&A that asks, what is the best approach to starting your own law firm?
Well, for me, the best approach was I worked with a sole proprietor law firm, and I saw from my articles how he did it, what was the best procedures he followed. And then as soon as I got admitted as an attorney, I phoned the Legal Practice Council, and I found all the sort of procedures that needs to be followed, which was our practice management course, which is a 6-month course, and then the application for your Fidelity Fund certificate, as well as doing all your accounting so that your trust account is submitted to the Legal Practice Council. Once all of that was adhered to, I could then register for my own law firm, which I did shortly after I got admitted. So I got admitted in 2014, 6 months after that, I registered my own firm. And like I said, my principal was very open to sharing his knowledge with us. So he showed us exactly how to actually register a firm while we were doing articles. It wasn't a huge challenge while we were actually doing it, because he guided us through the process. And that's why I opened it immediately after I got admitted as an attorney. If that helps with the question. What inspired me to get into the legal profession? I'll answer, and then I'll give over to Mr. Nisi to answer. Basically, I wanted to be a lawyer since I was 7 years old. There was no other field for me. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. There was nothing else besides being a lawyer. As much as my friends were actors and chartered accountants, it never interested me. I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer, and then everything just rubber stamped that for me as on my journey while I was studying, while I was doing my articles. And soon thereafter, when I opened up my own practice, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. There was no other profession that I wanted to actually do besides being a lawyer. So I knew it from 7. I don't know, for other people, it's a journey for them to discover, but for me, I knew from the time I was in grade 1 that I wanted to be a lawyer. Mr. Nisi?
With me, I was told by mostly my neighbors that you should be a lawyer. You should be a lawyer when I was growing up. I didn't know because I grew up in a deep rural village, so I didn't know what does certain professions do except social workers, teachers, and others, which were people that were living with. So my neighbors used to say, you should be a lawyer, you should be a lawyer. So that's when I started to investigate, what is this law? What is a lawyer? What do they do? Everything. Then I ended up joining law, and I'm still here. And to go back to the question about how to start a law firm, I think one first have to discover what he wants to do, because in law there is vast and majority of fields that one can practice in. After discovering what you are best in, like initially I was doing criminal law, customary law, and labor law. Then I ended up choosing customary law because most people in the villages and in the outskirts, outside of the cities, are suffering there. There's gross injustice that happens to those people, and mostly those people are subject to customary laws of their tribes and their chiefs and their rural places. So that's how I became the lawyer that I am today, and specialize in customary law. So again, when you want to start your firm, don't just take everything that you can do. First, discover yourself. Thereafter, start a law firm. And in the beginning, decide how much because law firm is business, how much you want to make monthly, so that you avoid taking 100 matters and mess all of them up. Take 10 and get your 200,000 Rand a month. Take 10 to cover your fees and everything, and then excel in those 10. Thereafter, you will fly very high. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is, where did you study law and what are the qualifications required to be a lawyer? So I studied at the University of South Africa, and what you need to become an admitted attorney, because with us you can have a law degree, but that doesn't qualify you to be an admitted attorney. So you need to study your 4-year LLB degree. This is what I did. Some people do a BA law and then add on that to actually get their 4-year degree. But what I did is I got my 4-year LLB degree at University of South Africa. And once I received my degree, that is when I applied for my articles. And I did my articles with a practicing attorney that practiced for over 48 years. So I was in good, capable hands. And then you do your articles for a period of 2 years. Once you're done with that, you then write your board exams, which is 4 exams. It's bookkeeping, estate law. What is the other two? I can't even remember it so long ago. Okay, criminal and civil law. So you do the 4 board exams, you pass your 4 board exams, and then you go for your admission in the High Court as an attorney. Once you get admitted as an attorney, you submit that through to the Legal Practice Council. And should you want to open up your own firm, as I've done, they will then require you to do a 6-month practice management course. This will basically teach you in that 6-month period how to actually run a law firm. So it's intensive courses and classes that you go for, offered by the Legal Practice Council. And once you've gotten your 6-month practice management course, you will then get what is called a Fidelity Fund certificate. And this is your membership to the Legal Practice Council. Without a Fidelity Fund certificate, you can't practice as for your own accord. You can't practice as a self-practicing attorney. So yeah, that's basically my journey to get to admitted attorney and then owning my own practice to date. Yeah. Mr. Musi?
I did my LLB degree, which is a 4-year undergraduate degree at the University of Venda for 4 years. Thereafter, I went to law school for 6 months. A law school is intensive practice of a lawyer, day-to-day practice of a lawyer. After that, I served articles for a year to do the law school for 6 months. Because it's so extensive, then it reduces another 6 months. Instead of doing the 2-year practice contract, you serve 1-year contract. Thereafter, after I got admitted as an attorney, and then I remained an attorney to this very day. However, from completing your LLB, you may choose to serve pupillage. When you serve pupillage, then you become an advocate, what is called a barrister in the UK. Here in South Africa is an advocate. Then you practice in chambers with a group of other advocates. You share resources, you share knowledge, you share books. Then your duties is only to represent clients in court. I am an attorney. As an attorney, I am the immediate available legal representative for the person. Then when we need to go to court, that's when we appoint an advocate. Thank you.
Just to add on that, if you practice for 5 years, you actually get right of appearance in the High Court. It's been reduced to 3. Okay, if you practice for 3 years, you actually get High Court appearance, and then you can practice. You can actually go to High Court yourself without having to brief an advocate. Obviously, advocates have more extensive experience in litigation in court, High Court, so that's why you brief them. But if you've been practicing for over 3 years, you can actually do it yourself. How did you decide to specialize, to do what you specialize in? With me, basically, I drew to estate law by dealing with the estate personally. So when I was young, I also lost loved ones, and I saw that the attorney that I went to didn't know much about estate law and didn't hold my hand and guide me through the process. So when I got into the field of law, it was something that interested me. And that's where I saw that it can be done a bit better. You can actually hold someone's hand and you can walk them through a journey that they've lost someone and guide them through that process. Because when you lose a loved one, I feel that you already in a state of turmoil. So you need someone to actually show you the law, show you what your rights are, and also give you some kind of confirmation that you're not going to lose everything. So someone to actually guide you through that process. So I saw that was a bit of an empty space in our field of law. I mean, lawyers want, as much as lawyers do estate law, not a lot of them specialize in it. It's not a field that everybody wants to specialize in. So I saw that I could actually specialize in estate law and I could provide a much needed service to a lot of people and give people what I never got when I was actually looking for a estate lawyer. So that's how I kind of drew to estate law. And obviously when I was serving my articles, also my principal, he was very open in giving me work to do at estates. So he gave me a lot of knowledge in estate law as well. So I knew that was where I was going to specialize probably for the rest of my career. But bear in mind, your career grows. I'm not saying it's something that I'm going to do forever, but it's what I found passion in right now. As you grow as an attorney, you always find new things. I recently, 2 years actually, I got admitted as a conveyancer. So now I'm doing property law and I'm finding an interest in that as well. So as you grow, so will your field of law and your passion in law grow as well.
Mm-hmm. The decision that had me where I am now is because I was there already. Like I said, I'm from the outskirts of South Africa. So the people there was their day-to-day experience. Then as a lawyer, they were all turning to me, can't you help? Can't you help? So that's what motivated me to stay in customary law and practice customary law, learn it, understand it to help apply it to whenever it's necessary to our people, because I am already there. I couldn't look out for experience and anything. I was there, I'm there now, I'll be there forever. Thank you.
Okay, the next question, would you say that racial inequality is still a problem in the South African legal system? When it comes to interstate succession, I think it's now that we base all our law on the Constitution, it's been much alleviated. But in terms of customary law, I think actually Mr. Misi will be at a greater position to tell you what is the injustices that we are facing now still with customary law.
Racial inequality, yes, because mostly in South Africa, you are married when you have a marriage certificate, and that's Eurocentric. It's from Europe. The marriage certificate and everything is from Europe. In our customary marriage, there's no marriage certificate. It's going to be simple and easy for you to dissolve your estate, the estate of your deceased husband, if you have a marriage certificate. I suppose that's racial, because all now, if we go to the races, all the Europeans and or people who are from Europe or who are from outside South Africa, not South Africa, will have marriage certificate. It's going to be easy for them. Then in the case of an African native, they'll say give proof, bring people to file affidavits that you were married. But we know you stayed with the deceased for 30, 40 years. So I am saying yes, it is.
What tips or advice do you have for students in high school currently looking at law as a possible career choice? My biggest tip is don't do it for the money. Don't do it for the money at all. Don't get into law because you think lawyers make a lot of money. Because when you have to work until midnight for an urgent application and you have to do, the money might not be there, but you still have to ignite some kind of love and passion for it. So first and foremost, love what you do. Like when you know that you want to be a lawyer, if you know that that's a field that you're interested in, then you know you have to love it first. Don't get into law for the sake of money. And also be someone that likes reading. I mean, once you get into the law field, that's your life. There's not a day that will go by in your field that you won't be reading. So make sure that it's something that you enjoy doing. You know, if you enjoy reading, then you know it's half of the battle is won already. So make sure that that is what you want to do when you leave high school, as opposed to just seeing it as a quick money game, because it's really not. Most lawyers only really reach their peak in South Africa at about in their 40s. Nobody really does it straight out of varsity. You know, it's just the very lucky few, but most lawyers only peak in their firms after 40. So it's a long, hard road. So make sure it's what you love.
Now,
just after you, sir, after you respond, we are gonna have to move on to the next. We're gonna have to move on with timing. I'm afraid our schedule is very tight at the moment. We have run a little bit over, but we can let one more answer go through.
I will emphasize that do it for passion, do it for the love of the profession, not for the money, because like my learned colleague has said, the money is not always there. Some clients will escape without servicing your bill. Then you'll have to understand that you have now to sue them. And then if you don't like doing it for your client, how are you going to sue your own clients now who haven't paid you? So do it for the love of it, not for the money. And then you will remain in this field for lifetime, and then it will pay after 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to address you on something we both find so rewarding. It was a great opportunity to hopefully inspire you to join the field of law, and to hopefully see you guys one day as our learned colleagues and have you sitting around the table with us debating on critical law issues. Thank you.
Thank you much, Mrs. Thank you very much, you two, for your excellent speech. I know I found it incredibly informative and enjoyable, and I know everyone else did as well. I'll now hand over to Sohi and Jenna to give closing remarks and some more information about the competition we will be putting on tomorrow.
We would sincerely like to thank all of our keynote speakers and workshop hosts for taking the time from their busy schedules to speak at our conference. We really appreciate all of the insight you have given us and hope everyone has found today as brightening as we did.
To close the first day of our conference, we would like to provide a brief overview of how our trial competition will look like tomorrow. Feel free to screenshot or take a photo of the slide if you would like. Prosecution and defense lawyers have all been sent the overview of the case last night on the previous slide, and we hope you will make contact with your teammates to slightly discuss on how to approach this case. To start off the trial, the prosecution will start with Speaker 1 giving the opening statement in under 5 minutes, followed by the defense Speaker 1 giving a 5-minute opening statement as well. The prosecuting Speaker 2 will then have 7 minutes to respond to our first scenario, which will be presented to you as the trial progresses, with the defense second speaker also having 7 minutes to rebut and also argue the facts of the first scenario.
Okay, so following this, the third speaker from each side will respond to the second scenario that we'll give, as well as a surprise statement, which will be sent to you by the judges privately on Zoom. And then the fourth speakers from each team will then respond to the third scenario and then provide rebuttals for any previous points made by the opposing side previously. If your group consists of 5 speakers, the fifth speaker and the last speaker will reply to the fourth and last scenario and provide a closing statement for the team as a whole. And the prosecution will go first in this procedure as well.
However, if your team consists of 6 speakers, the fifth speaker will respond to the fourth and last scenario, and the sixth speaker will then provide a closing statement for the team as a whole. The prosecution will begin first in this case as well. This last round of speeches will be 10 minutes long in total per team. Please note that your judge will give you 10 minutes to deliberate through chat after you have seen the slide representing each new scenario as the case progresses.
At the end of all of the speeches, the jury will decide on the verdict of the case, and the judge will declare the ultimate winner of the trial. If you have any questions about tomorrow, please feel free to email us or direct message us through our Instagram account. We hope you are all excited as we are, as we step closer to our next day of the IYLC 2021, and we wish you all a good day or night before the trial tomorrow. Thank you for coming to the first day of the International Youth Law Conference.